OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Alright, you're very welcome along. It is OTB AM. We have a full house for you today. I'm here. My name is Ger and Shane. We're here until 10 o'clock. You can get us on 0879 180 180. Also here is Adrian Barry.
Good morning, my name is Adrian Barry.
And Shane Hannon.
Morning, I'm Shane Hannon from Monaghan.
Hey. Right, there you go. We've actually got a lot to get to today. Today's show is busy and lined up, and we have David Clarke joining us to talk about the goalkeeping situation across the world, but particularly how good Mayo were at the weekend as well. The hurling power rankings. It's going to be pretty interesting to see where everybody is with Will today. John Duggan's going to join us. We've got Derek McNamara looking back on the Hurling Champions Cup final. Do we have to do that? Do we have to? Seani Maguire is going to join us at 9:10, now part of the Coventry setup, and then we'll play out with some Tony Cascarino goodness and conversation with Joe. There's lots to talk about, right? Bukayo Saka signed a new deal. It says he's getting 200 grand a week. One paper says 300 grand. There's a significant enough difference between 200 grand a week and 300 grand a week. I realise it all sounds like monopoly money to you, but 100 grand a week every week for 52 weeks is 5 million quid. I think 5 million quid is a significant enough difference. I mean, I don't know.
It's a lot of money.
I don't know that much about money. That seems like a lot.
My sympathy for him isn't massive either way.
I'm not asking about sympathy, but just like the reporting on this is like it's 200 or 300 grand. Like that's
I always find the finances of Premier League clubs to be a head scratcher.
Irrelevant.
Well, in the monopoly money sense of, so let's say you are a mid-level accountant at Manchester City Football Club, right?
Yeah.
You're on a decent salary, and it comes to pay negotiations.
Yeah.
Listen, just lump in another 40%.
Yeah.
Who's going to? It makes absolutely no difference. I mean, that club maybe particularly, but I mean, even at a club like Arsenal, when, as you say, a player has the ability to go in and say, well, I'll take 300 there rather than 2, and the club are going to go, grand, let's crack on.
Yeah, it's that's one of the things about that Ted Lasso's really got right in the latter seasons when they've been in the Premier League. All the cars just became supercars in the background. You're like, of course, one of these like up and coming, underdog people. They're all like gazillionaires now.
It's ridiculous. See John Ram quoting Ted Lasso?
Was he? What did he say?
He said, I didn't get it because I haven't seen Ted Lasso yet. For me sins. Yeah. But he said he made a mistake on one of the holes last week, and he was like, be like a goldfish. There's some reference to a goldfish, and then he explained to all the reporters it's because the goldfish are probably the happiest of all animals because they only have a memory of 10 seconds, and that was kind of the attitude he's taken into his golf. Forget about the mistakes.
It's funny. It's funny. It's just mad. It has become this cultural phenomenon. Anyway, we digress. The under-17s last night won 4-2. It was an amazing start where they were 1-0 up again after 4 minutes and then conceded. You're like, oh, this could be like the Poland game, but it wasn't. They dumped the host Hungary out, and now we wait to find if they've got Serbia or Slovenia or Spain potentially. But the under-17s hammered in their opening game, annihilated, and then roaring back into it with two wins.
That'll be on Saturday afternoon, I think, the quarter-final. We were talking with Mason Amelia last week with Vinnie Perth briefly, and a lot of excitement about him at St Pat's, only 15 years of age. And Luke Kerr is also a St Pat's player, like both the two lads who got 2 goals apiece. I don't know, like we kind of had the conversation when's too young to bring them in, but clearly if they're getting League of Ireland senior football, it's paying off at their 17 level, because they probably walk into the 17 setup going, this is grand.
He's 15.
Mason Amelia is 15.
That's too young.
Do you think so?
Yeah.
To be playing League of Ireland football.
I mean, I thought you were going to bring them into the senior.
No, sorry, yeah.
League of Ireland football, I'd say. I mean, that's not a disparaging comment to the League of Ireland. I realise now as it comes out of my mouth, to any club level, throw them in. Yeah, why not? Like,
give them a go.
A little bit of experience. Quality of the goals was savage as well. Do you have to remember? I think Hungary had no. I don't know how they got on their other group matches, but they had no qualifying campaign, so they didn't have that same level of preparation that you might have. And I'm not. It's just a bit of an expectation manager. I think Spain, it seems like, might be the most likely of those 3. Yeah. Depending on how the games go today, that'll be an altogether different assignment.
Underage powerhouse Spain, fair enough. Evan Ferguson, England, no way. Thank Evans for that. As teenage striker Ferguson, this is international future lads. No, but boys and green. So technically, as Mark McHatton points out, he could still change because the way FIFA rules changed. You now have to have played a certain number of competitive games. I think it's 3 competitive games if you're under 21.
They're always at it. They're always at it.
Well, they're not, right?
They are, though.
No. This all came from... It was Paul Rowan has been writing about this for months.
I know, but like...
Also, we would ask... Sorry, hang on a second. Sorry, this isn't not even hypothetical. Nathan Murphy asked Harry Kane, would he play for Ireland? So, I mean, if they're always at it, we're definitely, remember before he became Harry Kane?
Yeah.
And then Nathan was like, oh, you've got your Mayo roots. Whatever, Mayo is.
I mean, that's not a question. That's just Mayo being at it.
It was definitely, it was Mayo. It was definitely, would you think about it? And it was still an option at that point, and it wasn't Galway. And then he was, actually, Nathan's really from Galway now anyway.
That's his local radio hat on.
And he said, I'm England all in. And it kind of feels like you're sort of semi-obliged to ask the same thing about it. He's qualified. He would get a stack of England caps.
Few England games or a few bad games for Evan Ferguson, and all of a sudden, oh yeah, he's Irish. He's absolutely Irish.
Well, he is absolutely Irish.
Well, he is absolutely Irish.
It was never.
He said himself he wouldn't be allowed back.
Apparently, Melissa Wright is getting shit for asking the question. Is that you? And were you?
No. I'd say it came from above. I wouldn't blame Melissa Reddy for it, to be honest. I'd say that's a question. Go on.
No, but the question started because Paul Rowan was writing, "Oh, he can still play for England," and it's like I hadn't heard anybody say it. To
be fair, the question was asked more tongue in cheek. It wasn't like a.
I think she said,
question.
"Some of my friends in different WhatsApp groups." If I'm right,
just making sure that he won't.
Yeah, fair.
Or maybe it was that he will. Anyway, OTB AM with you, that lads got the ultimate shaver. Your money back. Neon Light editions available now. Ferguson, the hype train that we have been on, and choo all the way from like the first seconds that everybody else seems to have caught up. But Roberto De Zerbi is driving the train. It turns out, like
really pushing the agenda.
Every available opportunity is like, nah, this guy's just unbelievable. He's better. He's even better than you guys think. It's like, I mean,
one of the best players in the Premier League is what he said in his latest comment ahead of the Man City game tonight. It'd be interesting to see him tonight now. I hope because he's obviously been his minutes are being managed. Is that the word, these things that he's
and I guess now they're going to have European football next year. His minutes will be managed next season as well, but that's great because like every game is going to be a big game next year. They obviously will have a target on their backs after playing so well. People will be preparing for Brighton as like a brilliant team. You've got like 3 or 4 players you need to absolutely be careful of, and they seem to have done a load of business already. If everything is confirmed that we think is going to be confirmed about them, they've handled their business pretty early in the season. And very interesting to see what happens, assuming De Zerbi stays.
Bit of competition brought in with Joy Pedro joining from Watford as well. Brighton wouldn't ordinarily pay £30 million for a player. In fact, I think that's well above their transfer record. Yeah. So this is a good player that they're bringing in. But we had Andy Naylor on from The Athletic yesterday, and he was saying like this is not a problem for Evan Ferguson whatsoever. De Zerbi really fancies him, and that this is just because, as you said, they'll have European football next year. They'll have a lot more games.
Do you know he could be his replacement eventually? That like they're really good at that kind of stuff. And they have a bunch of other 18-year-olds who they're giving game time to at the moment, who are also forwards. They brought that Australian on last weekend.
The man in Seesaw as well, isn't he?
Pretty good, yeah. And Undav obviously missed a sitter on one of the big games, but then has scored a few goals since. Scored an own goal too. But look, they just seem to be pretty good at team building, and so I don't know. How much money will Bowes get when he gets sold? What percentage is it? Is it connected to the game time that he had? Or does it matter the game time that he had as a player for the senior team? Does it matter just that he comes through?
Is on it here. Our research team is on it here.
Well, I wonder if anybody in the comments actually knows the specifics of that, because I think there's some kind of formula that is dependent.
De Zerbi said he's going to hang around. By the way, look, I know these things are sort of like.
I'm certain he will hang around this season, but like eventually. He is not going to hang around.
Yeah, well, even in the middle of next season, a big gig comes up.
Oh, you mean De Zerbi's going to stick around? I thought you meant Ferguson.
De Zerbi said he'd hang around. And like even in Ferguson, I mean, who really knows when the big money starts getting sort of touted around? It does seem as if he's culturally disposed to hanging around, obviously. But with the City game tonight, it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, they've the title wrapped up, celebrations done, big games on the horizon. I mean, even City's second team is pretty impressive. So
City's second team with a hangover might not be though.
Yeah. He could go on.
You're picking all the non-drinkers.
Scores 5 goals tonight.
But Brighton will be hungover as well. So they've secured European football. They've nothing to.
I
suppose
guaranteed they finished 6th, right? Yeah. I mean, they played Villa in the last game. Am I right? Have I got my facts right here? I think they're probably they're probably safe anyway because they've far superior goal difference.
They're thereabouts, yeah.
Yeah, they are.
Can't find the sign-on fee for Evan Ferguson, but we'll find it. Matoma, it sounds like Matoma's staying as well.
I mean, he's so good.
I think that is key.
Yeah.
I do think that is key. Like, did you see the second goal that he scored the other night? And Ferguson was talking about it afterwards. He said, I've run into the position.
Exactly.
He knows where it's going to come.
Me out, and as he does, and he does that all the time.
Yeah, you can't be missing those. They're the ones that, like, you can't be missing those. But no, it was sensational. Colin was saying the first one, keeper should have saved that. I don't think the keeper can save those ones where
Did he expect it?
Well, it's also straight like big men getting straight down to their feet. You know, there's a reason why they do all those. It's like, where are you going to score? Right in the corner, right at him. Just anyway.
Gavin Bazunu would have saved that. 100%.
He might have gone with his feet, as I say. There's there's an experience of that. It's where are we? It's May. Kerry are playing Cork. Dara O'Shea. Cork. I mean, geez, I don't know if we're going to keep it kicked out to them. They're so good in the papers today. Every year for the last decade, as Kerry have racked up massive scores. Sorry, they're not even playing Cork this weekend. They've got to play Louth first, right?
Louth and Cork is this weekend.
Yeah. He's like, this is serious now for Kerry. We're actually worried about Cork. And if it was true that they were worried about Cork, it would be serious.
Yeah, it's trying to invent an interest in Munster football, isn't it? I mean, we see now where Kerry are at. Kerry had a per league campaign.
Hang on, you're writing them off?
No.
Go on.
But they had a per league campaign by Kerry standards, and we're thinking, right, they'll be okay for championship. Then they obviously they win the Munster championship without much of a bother, but that's hardly a surprise.
And
then we see where they're at in Killarney at the weekend against Mayo, and
did we see where they were?
I don't think we did.
But this championship football against Mayo, the difference in topping your group and not topping your group, Kerry will very soon realise could be key, because they could now, let's say now they finish second in the group. Let's assume Mayo win the last two games. Kerry finish second in the group, so they have a preliminary quarter final against someone who finishes third. That could be anyone. That could be a Monaghan. Yeah, it could be a nasty. It could be a Kildare.
Will that be in Killarney?
I don't know what the home. I assume second place gets the home advantage, as opposed to the third place team.
I think, given the thing that we've spoken about with the group stages before, about the non-jeopardy aspect of it, particularly for Kerry footballers, it just doesn't suit their psyche. Like, they come forward when, you know, the backs is to the wall. They actually need to win the game. And I know there's been a lot made about Mayo haven't won there in 175 years and all that sort of stuff, but it is. We spoke about it last week. I wasn't saying it was a dead rubber. Oh, it wasn't exactly.
No, but what people don't realise is Kerry losing that match now means they'll probably, in an All-Ireland quarter-final, assuming they get past a preliminary quarter-final, in a quarter-final they play Dublin or Galway or Derry. So you've all of a sudden, by losing to Mayo, given yourself a horrific path to the All-Ireland.
It's much more difficult. I actually think it was a big game. It really matters, and I think that, like, Mayo are reborn as a result of it. The other thing is, you never give a sucker an even break. Mayo are now looking at themselves going, Jesus, everything we said we'd do, we're doing. We won the league, we licked our wounds after our common game, we come back and we roared into Kerry in Killarney in a full house.
But on the back of their minds, they know that it's not real.
But on the back of their minds, but hang on, like this, I have to say, I think that this is all like ancient. An ancient approach to league and championship doesn't start till Croke Park, and it's like, hang on a second now,
John B. Keane,
how does anybody actually recover form? It's going to be, in previous years, right, Tyrone in the middle of the league could ship 7 goals or whatever it was down in Kerry, and they could have a team meeting afterwards, and they could take a month to get going, and they could find their way. Only time that I can actually remember a team in the middle of the championship having radical surgery is the half-time in the drawn game, where Mickey Hart completely changes his team, makes 6 changes, they get a draw against Dublin, blow them away in the replay and go on and win the All-Ireland. But that was a team who'd already won it. Maybe some of the Horan era, they made such big changes with the goalkeeper and some other things, but never as radical as a change in form from being beaten at home by 5 points to then just casually coming up and beating the Dubs or Derry or Galway.
I don't think they went
semi-final.
I don't think Kerry, obviously I'm not saying that Kerry went out to lose the game, for sure. They obviously put all their tactics in place. The players went out to win the game. They're up for it because it's Mayo. I'm accepting all of that. But equally, there is that quiet voice in the back of a Kerry head saying, it doesn't really matter, lads. It'll be grand on the track. And like, they're not, the evidence of that would be that they're not going to spend the next couple of weeks poring over a defeat to Mayo in a match that doesn't really mean anything.
Well, except that everybody now has tape on Kerry and how to beat them, and everybody now has able to whisper in their ear, going, "Jeez, you know, I added it all this year."
Well,
You got fat over on the spoils of being All Ireland champions. Metaphorically, lads, you're leaning back there. You're All Ireland champions. You don't even need to do the work, and you didn't do the work. Did you do the work?
That was the thing. Work rate against Mayo wasn't there.
Was there defensive structures? Was it exposed by Kerry?
Colin Boyle last night was talking about the matchups and Kerry getting the matchups very wrong against Mayo, and that's something that you'd think they'd have learned from the league match as well earlier in the year.
What are you saying? Are you saying that Kerry are not what we thought they were, or that they're what are you reading into this? Because I think that this could become a footnote.
No, I think they beat Cork in the next game, and I think they beat Louth at the neutral venue in the last game, and I think they get to the preliminary quarter final where they play a third place team. They'll probably win that match, and then all of a sudden they'll potentially have an extremely difficult quarter final.
They could have a really easy third place team, right?
They could have,
They could have, or they could have a quite difficult third place team.
Yeah.
But the draw and the hot balls, we'll see what happens. It's very unusual for Kerry to get difficult draws. That's just a conspiracy theory. I don't actually believe that, obviously. I do think that these games really matter, and turning a season around is going to be difficult. And I also think that as the season goes on, you're going to start suffering injuries, you're going to start having suspensions. It's much better to be a team who's winning at this point and not having that extra game, for example. So it's game, I think, or it's certainly 3 games in 4 weeks at least.
I think there's one gap week.
They have June 3rd against Cork, and then they have June 17th or 18th, so they have 2 weeks between that and the Louth match.
And then after the Louth match, preliminary quarter final.
Yeah.
Unless Mayo screw up. And then quarter final. Do you have those?
Preliminary quarter finals will be 24th, 25th of June, so a week after that last game against week after the last match.
And then it must be the quarter final the next week.
Quarter final is the next week, yeah. First
3 games in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter?
Yeah, that's going to be tough. That's very tough. Now, players prefer matches probably compared to training, but still 3 matches in 3 weeks is...
Someone tweaks a hammer, though.
Yeah.
You want that extra...
bit of time to recover. It's a lot.
That's why I think this stuff matters. And maybe they're fine, and maybe everybody finds form. We shall see.
It's difficult.
You still think it doesn't matter at all?
I think they'll be grand. I genuinely think
grand means winning the All Ireland.
Yeah, I don't think it dents their... I don't think it should dent their odds on winning the All Ireland.
It's definitely, I think it absolutely should, and it does now. Dublin are favourites, by the way. That happened
off the back of last weekend.
Yeah,
right.
With the
Dublin are favourites.
Yeah. But Dublin have a fairly
what are Kerry?
Dublin have a fairly straightforward run through. Now they might get Kerry in the quarterfinals. Can we? There's no. That's an open draw for the second place teams, right? It is.
So Mayo. Where are Mayo in that?
Oh, Mayo are still a big price.
Because, we're big of Mayo up for saying that they went down to Killarney and beat the champions after all these years. Well,
they shortened their odds.
Yeah.
It absolutely shortened.
Mayo hype train has officially it's left the stage. Yeah, it's left the stage.
And I think that's fair. I think that as much as I'm saying that Kerry shouldn't get too down about this, and I've no doubt that they won't, and it's the bit of a defeat will be a little bit of salt into the wound and give them a bit of energy, I'm sure, for the next few weeks. But equally, Mayo should absolutely get on board the hype train, and the players should be thinking, I'm sure the management team are saying.
Well, Joe Biden emailing one of the mayors yesterday, finishing off. Maybe it's all coming together.
Who did he email? What was this?
Well, he was thanking the mayor of one of the towns. I think it was the mayor of Ballina.
Yeah. The young fella.
Mayo for Sam.
Yeah.
One more thing. Mayo for Sam. Maybe it's
Joe Biden.
Who are you saying? Yeah, Joe Biden.
Who are you saying?
That was Joe Biden. Sorry, that was Joe Biden.
You've been better off doing your GMAC impression.
We're talking about Joe Biden, yeah.
But yeah, they should absolutely say, well, we've beaten the champions in their own backyard. You got to convince yourself of this stuff.
Very harsh.
However true it is, or otherwise.
Are you not buying Mayo now? I'm back in on Mayo.
You're back in a Mayo. You also think Dublin are going to win the All Ireland?
Oh, I do, yeah, but I think Mayo are going to go much further than I thought. I thought that there was a potential for them to be a bit flaky after what happened against Roscommon, but it turns out that
6 weeks off is
that was a blip. And who cares? Who cares about the Connacht Championship? They all have medals. The vast majority of them have got medals.
The lads were out in the sun for 2 weeks. The Mayo players.
2 weeks.
They had 2 weeks in the sun before they even had to go back to training.
It's that Armada blood. That's why they.
We were talking as well about the rules this morning, Ger.
Yeah.
We'll be talking to David Clarke obviously about this as a goalkeeper, just to get his thoughts. But these new rules are going to be trialled in the higher education tournaments next time around. The Sigerson Cup will get these new rules. Myself and Adrian were trying to rack our heads as to how they're going to work. Basically, goalkeepers' goal kicks have to go beyond the 45 before the defending team. AKA
you shouldn't confess that you didn't understand this rule, because it's very simple.
Simple, but no. Sorry, understand the rule. But
don't give them the coast of the nuclear thing, lads.
But also
let them fly a plane or operate any heavy vehicles.
Yeah, there are sideline. I've actually had flying lessons in the past before.
Oh, so my God! Well, I ain't getting in the plane with you, buddy.
I've been entrusted with an airplane.
When you hear your pilot today is Shane Hannon.
How does the kick-out rule work? You have to kick it over the 45.
Yeah,
that's the kick-out rule.
And if it doesn't go over the 45, you as the, I don't know what you would
defending
be,
team, or
would you be the defending team?
Goalkeeper.
You would be the defending team. When your goalkeeper kicks it out, you are defending.
Or are you attacking?
I mean,
which came first, the chicken or the egg?
But anyway, you got to stand. Whatever it is, you got to stand back and you got to let.
You see what we have to put up with?
you got to stand. You could be the attacking team. When do you become the attacking team?
Well, it's your goals.
Yeah, so your keeper kicks it out and you grab it
under the rules, right?
I think you're
under the rules. You're the defending team.
Sorry, it's not the Sigerson, is it? It's the higher education. I said Sigerson, but the higher education could be
the freshers.
Yeah, exactly.
Sigerson is the higher education. It's the ultimate, and then it's the freshers.
Stand corrected.
Well, I don't know. Is it in the Sigerson as well? They're not surely screwing up the Sigerson.
No, they wouldn't touch it.
They might do it in the league.
So if it doesn't make it past the 45, you as the defending team, you got to stand back and let your opponent grab it, or else grab it and then give it free to the opposition.
Exactly.
There. Yeah.
So it's basically, what is it trying to do away with?
Short kickouts, which I really love. I love when the players meet in the middle and then they all make their little divergent runs.
What's wrong with short kickouts? Like it's
ruining the game. It's blighting the game. Blah blah blah.
The bit that's ruining the game. So this is basically going to try and get the ball quicker up to the lateral zone, so they can more quickly go over and back across the pitch. That's all that's happening here.
It's a return to the days of old where you just smack the ball long and hope for the best. I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me.
Look, I love addressing a problem that's not there. Yeah. In my view, like I think that the lateral thing, could we do something about that? That'd be. Well, it's going to cause the likes of David Moran came up on the show last night, and like David Moran, if this new rule is interpreted in say senior football, he's all of a sudden going to should I stay on for another year or two? High fielding is now the most important skill in the sport, because these goal kicks have to go long. So I don't know, it'll change some players' opinions as to how long they play on in the game. But the other one was the sideline balls as well, that have to go forward if they're kicked between the 20 metre and the 20 metre line. Sidelines, free kicks, marks,
all have to go forward.
Yeah.
Essentially,
or can't go backwards. And now you're obviously into
did that go sideways?
It's already unrefereeable sport. They're making far more complicated than it needs to be. Like they should be simplifying the rules, not making them more complex. Get rid of the advance mark. Let teams deal with the rules the way they are, and let the best attacking teams rise to the top the way they have done in sport over the last 2 decades, and stop whining about it and let's get on with it.
If they said between the two 20 metre lines the ball can't go back at all from open play or any situation, that's actually easier to referee.
Makes more sense.
And would make more sense to do away with the lateral stuff.
Thanks for ruining Ted Lasso on me, says Tennis Tank. We did not. There were no spoilers.
What was the spoiler?
No one said anything.
Something about a goldfish.
Yeah, that's
right. Morning, lads. You need to chat about Bod's comment that Paulie is ahead of Rog to become the future Irish manager, says Shane Doyle. I was travelling yesterday, haven't had the opportunity yet to listen back to Brian, which you can obviously get on the OTB Rugby feed on your podcasts.
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up. He obviously, Joe was asking, there's a lot of discussion at the minute about the rising star that is Roger. It's pretty high in the sky at the minute. I mean, I don't know much further it can rise. He obviously made the comments afterwards to Aisling that the Hurling gig is in his crosshairs at some point or another, so it'll be interesting to see.
It was always the Hurling gig.
Yeah. I wonder, so I was watching a bit of New Zealand TV highlights last night, but their reflections on the game. John Kerry was on.
Why are you doing this to yourself? Just a matter of interest. What kind of masochism? This is the big reveal.
I haven't brought myself to be able to watch the entire game back yet, but I have watched some of the highlights, and it gets more awful with every rewatch. Sorry, they were saying, I'm totally distracted now by my grief. They were saying that they were very enthusiastic about the atmosphere to begin with.
Because I was told it was shite, even though I was there and it was great.
John Kerwin, they were obviously just watching it on the TV, and I was there, and it was unbelievable. The atmosphere was incredible. It was
everybody
electric.
I spoke to who was at the game that said it was incredible.
The jeopardy of a final against, like, it's those two teams now is the biggest rivalry in European rugby, like, undeniably. I mean, La Rochelle might tell you it's not even a rivalry because they've got so much the upper hand, but it's the competition between the two of them is fierce. You could feel that outside of the ground. You could feel it on the way in. There was loads of La Rochelle people around. It was a cracking day. The atmosphere was brilliant. The sense of anticipation, it was brilliant. I really enjoyed it, and I think that, like, it's a slightly different atmosphere. I know it's been compared obviously with some of the great Munster away days, and there's a few different dynamics that go on with away days in the sense that you have a travelling party of people going abroad, a bit like the La Rochelle supporters were for the game at the weekend, and there's a bit more of a band of people together, I think, in a way that you don't get with a home game like that. And I also think the way the game went, like, if people were a little bit quiet at a certain point, it was because, like, the nerves were off the charts.
I'm sorry, just as well, the whole thing about the Aviva, people getting up and going for pints, it's all nonsense. Like, nobody left their seats because the game was in jeopardy, but everybody complains about, people are going up, why can't they sit down and watch the Italy game when we're 40-0 up? It's like, well, because we're 40-0 up, it's the whole point. This whole thing about the Aviva, the atmosphere being terrible, they should stop serving drink. When the game is in the melting pot, nobody gets up and leaves their seats. That's the thing. Like,
no true rugby fans. Well, we should touch more on the Leinster game, lads. Kildare and Westmeath men here. I need to hear your thoughts.
The lads,
your trauma
on Monday, Shane.
I know you are, but
to get back to the point. Mills Mullany and John Kerwin, they were saying that they were saying that, like, you know, this is a good template now for all the other teams in the World Cup to be looking at, because that's kind of Ireland, and while it's not kind of France in terms of personnel, it is kind of France in terms of the game plan. And you scrape that for if you scrape that for the goodness, that there's a whole pile of pointers as to what could be achieved here. So,
I think and I think Brian just was making that point too in the bits that I've seen in the papers today, where they're lifting his comments from last night off the ball. They were saying too about how if we don't have Sexton, we're not going to win the World Cup.
The one thing that I wondered about was, like, I would encourage Andy Farrell at some point or another. So leave it a few weeks. Maybe even leave it like a month or two.
Sorry, give us your idea first, because maybe just do it straight away.
Leave it a month or two.
While it's there, while the surge is there.
Let it sit, because I think the initial reaction might be, no, you're okay, thanks. Leave it a little while. And he has been involved with the Ireland camp before. Give Rog a shout. And a very open-ended question: is there anything you can do to help us win the World Cup? And, like, leave him at it. Maybe he wants to come in and get involved, take a few sessions, give some advice in the background.
He's got a job, though.
He has a job, but this is not in conflict with that job.
You mean inside info on the French lads in La Rochelle and how to wind them up?
I don't want to get too specific on it, because he could have anything that he might bring to the party, and I think that we should be, you know, because I think while there obviously have been, and I'm not reopening old wounds, there have been certain areas of the country that have been delighted about what happened at the weekend. Would you
maybe just book a flight for a little bit of it's summertime, it's got a couple of weeks off before you go into camp, just do a bit of wine tasting, maybe accidentally be down the La Rochelle, Ile de Ré direction, and
Atlantic coast of France,
just make a phone call and go, I just wondered if you had any
the area
good coffee shop. Oh, you're at home?
I'm just outside your door, actually.
I'd hate to. There's no way. That is me. Yeah, that is me. Yeah.
I think we could do worse. I'm not in the slightest bit being facetious about that. Andy Farrell, I'm sure, will be leaving no stone unturned in the park.
Adrian Barry says, Rog, your country needs you.
Yeah. Bring him in for a talk.
That's the title.
James O'Donoghue said in the football pod this week that they had Rog in for a talk with the Kerry footballers a number of years ago. He used to come in and give them a little bit of words of wisdom. So there's no reason why we can't even at least get him in for a...
Well, he has been involved with Ireland before, wasn't he? Was he involved? Was the Chicago game that he was involved in that time? There was a US tour.
It was
Joe Schmidt.
It was later, wasn't it?
Maybe it was after that.
We played the USA and Italy the next year, did we? I can't remember those games.
It was the Lions year, and I can't remember exactly what year was that. That was 7.
Okay, so but Paulie is ahead of him.
That was what Brian was saying. I think it was sort of on the basis that
he's
obviously been in there and about, and also his overriding point was that, like, obviously the stuff that Raj is achieving is extremely high profile, and he's on the TV and he comes across really well, and he's clearly doing an amazing job, whereas O'Connell's stuff is all sort of off Broadway but doing an equally brilliant job.
I think too, the whole point of having a succession plan is that you're supposed to activate it, that like you're training the next coaching ticket through your system. Having said that, there's you're going to have to, when the opportunity comes, you're going to have an interview, and you're going to have to go, what's your plans, lads, and have at it. And maybe they can somehow come to some kind of arrangement where they
jointly take it. There's egos involved here.
It could never happen.
No,
I don't think.
Well, I think that if you do that, then you don't get the benefit of having them both individually.
Yeah, it's a dream ticket on paper.
Would you do like Micheál Martin, Leo Varadkar?
6 months on, 6 months off. You take La Rochelle when I'm done. Like everybody's happy. It's like Mason is Clive Clarke nephew, says Shifty lad. He captained Stoke for years. Newtown man Kennedy lad. Okay, this is all breaking news to us. Harry Kane's dad was born in Galway, still has lots of family in Letterfrack. Gaelgores and great musicians regularly on TG Garra, says ML89. He's very good locally, sponsoring teams with donations, etc.
Harry Kane or his dad?
I presume Harry Kane. Would his dad have loads of money?
Who's regularly on TG Garra? That's what I'm trying.
The family.
Okay.
The family.
The Kanes.
Yeah, the extended family. Will Spurs want a result against Leeds for the Conference League? Lifeline for Leeds, maybe, says Lorkie. I don't think so. Ted Lasso spoiler straight out of the gate. There wasn't, was there?
I just mentioned a line that I have no context around because I haven't seen it.
I have a memory like a goldfish, but
I see what you did there. We should mention Eddie Dunbar before we wrap up. Unbelievable scenes at the Giro d'Italia from an Irish perspective, not just with Eddie but with Ben Healy as well. Ben Healy taking the King of the Mountains jersey yesterday.
This is amazing.
Really impressive. And he was only reeled in the final climb as well, so that was over 5,000 metres of climbing, by the way, yesterday.
In one day?
Over the 203
Oh my
kilometres.
God, I do like 150 and I'm like, oh my God, I'm dead. This is terrible.
It's just insanity.
I need to finish.
Yeah.
Wow.
We were saying yesterday, Eddie Dunbar's targeting a top 10 finish, and it's only his second Grand Tour, so that would be amazing. He's now in the top 5. So when
it's going to happen, yeah.
Well, when all of a sudden does his focus change? But yeah, top 5 general classification. There was a stage 16 yesterday. He was toe to toe with the main contenders. So Irish lads ripping it up in the Giro.
Absolutely sensational. Yeah. And apparently the weather's been absolutely horrific across the Giro too. So yeah. It's like all of a sudden we now have like real strength and depth when it comes to cycling at the elite level, and all different types of cyclists.
And they're both from Banteer and Cork. I think both Dunbar and Healy are from the same place in Cork.
Are they?
Someone commented that yesterday, so let us know in the comments if that's accurate, but I'm pretty sure they're both from
It's like
Banteer.
The Skibbereen of cycling.
Essentially, yeah.
Wow, this is very impressive stuff that they're doing. Anyway, we'll try and get a bit more information on what's happening a little bit later on in the week for you. OTB AM live with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. The online edition is available now. During the break, a clip from the latest episode of the Football Pod, where Paddy James and Tommy talk about whether there are bigger issues at play in the kingdom. The Football Pod is in partnership with AIB, proud sponsors of the Football, Hurling and Camogie All-Ireland Club Championships. Check out the hashtag #TheToughest for more.
OTB AM.
The Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball.
On this week's The Koigig podcast, we had an exclusive interview with Manchester United's Ona Battier ahead of the final day of the Women's Super League season.
I like and I love these kind of moments, these kind of games, like with those crowds and that pressure. I just love it. So I really wanted to enjoy every second.
Listen now and make sure you subscribe to the Koigig podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts.
I couldn't believe how bad Kerry were for the entire 70 minutes.
You've been there before after winning an All-Ireland and, maybe starting late your preparation for the following year, or, having a Leinster campaign that you might cruise through before you really get to the business end of it. We've obviously never seen a format like this before where Kerry will realistically get into the preliminary round of the quarterfinals. Is it possible to switch it on this far into the summer?
Michael Murphy brought this point up and he was questioning it big time, that the Kerry personnel is basically the same. Now, it's the same players that had won the All-Ireland last year and been in the trenches the last couple of years. We would have made a note with Dublin. The following year we won an All-Ireland. There was always 3 or 4 changes to the team. We had the luxury, we had that depth of panel that whether we were playing pretty easy Leinster Championship matches, and that was the reality of it, we were under pressure to perform because someone else was going to take our spot. That was the benefit we had. We'd kind of 25 guys who were playing, who could all play in the team. And for Kerry, you're looking at it there, it's the same team that won the All-Ireland last year. You know, and that's, you could say that's a positive because it got real consistency in selection. The guys know each other's patterns of play, things like that. But there's an edge there that Kerry just did not seem to have. That you're thinking, like Jack Barry and Dermot O'Connor are kind of wiped at midfield.
Yeah.
Timothy Foley struggles. Tom Sullivan struggles. Who's taking their places? You know, whether you like it or not, that's pretty much going to be the team that plays the next day for Kerry as well. And that's a dangerous situation to be in, where you only know if a team is hungry, or you only know if they have an edge when it happens on the day. You can do, we're training hard, we're doing all this, our preparation is good. You get your feedback on the pitch. And for Kerry, for their first test of 2023 was Saturday, and it was a miserable failure. But what does Jack O'Connor do? Does he drop 10 of them?
Well,
for him,
James,
who does he bring in?
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Yeah, it's safe to say Paddy Andrews doesn't agree with Adrian Barry's assessment of the Kerry-Mayo game. To get more on that now, and the football championship, and maybe some of the rules as well, I'm delighted to say David Clarke is with us this morning. David, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, man. How are you?
Yeah, good. That was pretty interesting at the weekend, you know. I'm not sure anybody had a 5-point win for Mayo, and it wasn't really just a 5-point win. It was like good performances all over the field, tactically very adept, a proper identifiable game plan, some players playing better than we've seen them play in a couple of years. You have to be excited if you're a Mayo fan.
Yeah, I suppose still have that maybe that warm feeling on a Wednesday morning after a weekend like that. Expectations gone through the roof. But I know, realistically, yeah, it's great. As you said, you've named it out there. You could see what Mayo were trying to do. Going back to the week before the game, Kevin McStay set it out plainly enough. Really, he goes, Mayo are going to bring a lot of aggression to the game. It wasn't anything about tactics. It wasn't anything about too fancy. That's the type of talk, because after the Roscommon game, there was a feeling. Mayo probably didn't get to the pitch of the game. They didn't get in their faces. They didn't push up high enough up the pitch. But it was all different against Kerry. And with that, then I suppose you've seen the very best of Mayo, pressing high, real runners from all over the pitch, great energy. And I suppose just one thing Paddy touched on there in that last clip is you don't know if a team is hungry or not until you get onto the pitch. And was in the first about 2 or 3 seconds, Aidan O'Shea and Paddy Clifford clashed together. And there was only one winner there, and I suppose that's the storm. For me, you could see that Aidan O'Shea was in a frame of mind that he was going to cause a bit of damage, and from there, I suppose things took off lovely. It's a testament, I suppose, really to Kevin McStay. The fellas that he brought back into the team, I know there was injuries against Roscommon, but he's shown real faith, I suppose, starting to cut him reap in goal. He said it stalled out at the start of the year. That Cullen was his man, David McBrien full back, Jack Coyne, you know, give him with some real important roles. Conor Loftus centre back. Again, really stuck with him. He said, "That's the role for you, Conor. We're going to get you involved there." And then up front, James Carr came back into the team and had a great impact as well. He brings something different to the Mayo team. But yeah, all positive stuff, and it's looking good for us.
That's probably what we said after the Roscommon loss, David, as well, that look, maybe this time off and time away, whatever it was, 5 or 6 weeks, could be good for Mayo. And as it turned out, I mean, Kevin McStay let the lads go off for 2 weeks, maybe got a bit of sun, and then back into the training. So do you think that had an impact, the rest, I guess, in comparison to the Kerry team?
Not sure if it's the rest, I suppose. Maybe after being at a high after winning that league final, it was difficult maybe to lower down and get back up to a certain level that's needed for championship football against Roscommon. I suppose that step away, as I said, there was a slight break. We played a club game. 2 or 3 of the Ballina lads came back and played that game with us, and then they went back into camp. But I suppose they were able to get a couple of these lads fit. Some of these under-20s, Donegan McHugh, Sam Callanan, they were back in the frame again. And as always, when you do have that long break, some of the players come out of the pack. Pádraig O'Hora hadn't played a whole pile. I know he had injuries during the year. He hadn't played a whole pile. And Jason Doherty, he was only playing cameo roles coming in as centre back, and he was trusted. It was a kind of a wing forward position, because I suppose he deserves a huge amount of credit, because he's had an unbelievably tough couple of years with cruciates and different serious injuries. So two boys came out of the pack, and they were trusted with jobs. But I suppose it freshened up, and that question about hunger, I suppose it's that great thing about sport. It's not maybe so much about what you're hitting in GPSs. It's how do you measure that hunger. And I suppose last year Mayo got 2 trimmings from Kerry, and deep down Mayo had that inside them. Kerry, I suppose they were trying to talk up the league game in Castlebar this year, that they felt they didn't do themselves justice that day. But I suppose in the back of their minds they got 2, I suppose, comprehensive enough victories earlier on, last season. So maybe there was that feeling that it was going to be something similar. But I suppose that hunger, and I suppose it is that unbelievably great thing about sport. If you can get that inside you, sometimes it's impossible to know if you have it until you get onto the pitch. But Mayo definitely had it on at the weekend.
It seems the other thing, so you've kind of talked about players coming back from injury there. The other thing they've managed to do is blood a number of younger players who have come through successful underage sides in recent years, and put them in the team and give them very defined roles, so their responsibility is clear, and there's no doubt about what in their minds about what they need to do, and they appear to be able to do that very well, which is kind of merging the old guard, getting the best out of them by, again, you mentioned Aidan O'Shea, reintroducing the injured players, and at the same time freshening the squad up with youthful exuberance and real pace.
Yeah, it's a real, I suppose, trait of Mayo the last 10, 12 years, if not more, pace from all over the pitch. And the way, I suppose, James Horn deserves a huge amount of credit, the way he's blooded a lot of these players. Like, there's not I don't think, any of them that are the first year in the panel. A lot of these lads were there even in my own time. So they're in and around the mix of the panel. Dave McBrien was there in my own time. Jack Coyne was in for a small while in my own time. Jack Carney has played the last couple of years. Cullen Reap was even in last year with James Horn. I think he was there as number 3. So as you go through the team, James Carr's there a good while. Sam Canalan and Donncha McHugh. Sam Canalan was there last year, and Donncha McHugh was there in and around the panel last year as well. So there's that bit of groundwork that was put in that it wasn't all new to them. But as I said, Kevin McStay seen what he liked, and he really went with them. And as you said, he trusted them. And I suppose trust from a manager is great. Like, just gives you confidence that you can have a couple of goes at this. If it doesn't go right the first or second day, you get another shot at it, and then you develop into your game, because it's shown now that these boys are ready, and they've taken those steps forward. And when you've seen the quality of the bench that Mayo were coming with in the last 20 minutes, you've 5-6 lads who are really in a position that would be playing in many people's minds, but they were able to come on and make an impact, which was great, especially around that middle 8, that middle part of the pitch where all that running and hard work is done, and that pace is needed. Maybe we're able to bring on Paddy Durkin there, made a great impact. Enda Hessian, great pace. Stephen Cohen, really calm and control. Owen McLaughlin, aggressive, raw, great finish, classy finish for the goal. But these different angles and runners. But yeah, there's been a great mix of the youth and experience. As you look through the team, I suppose I heard Kevin as well saying before they went down to Kerry that this group see themselves as equals to Kerry, even though there had been them couple of poor defeats last year. But those older, more experienced players, they wouldn't necessarily fear Kerry. And then when you have that from your older players and you have your younger, hungrier lads coming in behind it definitely pushes the team in the right direction.
There does seem to be some kind of template where Lee Keegan, Oisin Mullen are gone, and then it's just like new ones spring up like mushrooms overnight, who are not quite the equivalent yet in terms of athleticism and achievement, but what's in the water off the West Coast, that all of a sudden you've got these fast lads who can run 100 metres 25 times in the first half and then do it again in the second half?
Oh, it's a good question. I don't know, is it maybe that these lads were looking at the team the last 10, 15 years? Some of these lads in their early 20s, so all their football is seen as Mayo being an exciting team, running from the back. And they were some of Mayo's best players, as you said, Lee Keegan, Oisin Mullen, Keith Higgins for years, you had Donald Vaughan, Cullen Boyle. It was their half-back line, and them type of players that really, excited the Mayo public. and maybe it became cool to be that type of player and to have a go at it. But I suppose one thing I remember years ago, Liam McHale is in the coaching ticket there, but he says you can't coach pace. It's you either have it or you don't have it, and it's we're lucky enough that we've fellas that are interested in playing football, and they've got that real pace, and they've decided to throw their lot in with football, because some of them are probably hugely talented in other sports as well, but we're quite lucky that they've come through in that. And we've won ourselves there. Sam Callanan, like, is phenomenal athlete. He's only getting better week by week as an actual footballer. You know, decision making always cool and calm.
Like still a kid. Really.
Yeah. A couple of years ago, I think I was involved in an under-19 team and with the club, and I think he was still under 18. You know, the time of COVID, he wasn't allowed. Were the adult teams allowed back and the underage weren't, or he wasn't allowed to train with one of them. There's sort of a mix. There was a few months or a month or two when COVID had played some tricks on us, but and then he just shot off. You know what I mean? Had a couple of games with the club. The boys liked him with Mayo, with the scene, and he's in there now, and just, you know, he's made for it. You know, fine player, and he's only going to get better, like getting up the pitch, getting his kick passing going. But yeah, really impressive guy as well behind the scenes.
Was it just the case, David, that Mayo got their matchups right and Kerry got theirs wrong? Because I was listening to, you mentioned Colin Boyle there, he was on the show last night, and he was talking about Sam Callanan and how, you know, he did such a good job on Seani O'Shea in that first 45 minutes, as you mentioned. Then Paddy Durkin comes off the bench, and from a Kerry perspective, we said it earlier in the show, but in the league game earlier this year, you know, Jason Foley is marking Aidan O'Shea in the first half. They moved Dylan Casey onto him, and O'Shea has a very good day against Dylan Casey, and all of a sudden they put Casey on him from the start of the weekend, and Aidan O'Shea ends up as man of the match. Was there a number of just mismatches, do you reckon, by management on the Kerry side of things?
I'm not sure if you'd call it mismatches. I think it goes back to that whole thing of getting to the pitch of the game. Like, it looked like a lonely place for the full back line there for Kerry. Like, there was Mayo. I think one thing that I was really impressed with was the way Mayo when Kerry did get their kind of some ways defensive shape back there, Mayo kept huge width and depth. I suppose these are two buzzwords now in coaching, but they were leaving three lads inside there, and they were keeping real width. So that D was open, and you had Tyke Morley then, he didn't know whether to come out and meet Jack Carney or meet some of the runners, or sit back right in front of Aidan O'Shea and then be overrun by runners. So that's I think it's easy just to say that it's the full back issue. Mayo were getting time to kick those little bounce passes or those fist passes into it, you know, at times, and it's a difficult place to be. They didn't get the protection I suppose that Tyke Morley had offered maybe the last season. Like, that was one of the key aspects of Kerry's game, getting Tyke Morley back in there covering up that D. But I think it was something I was really impressed with Mayo, that they were able to open up that pitch. You know, they obviously thought about it. It's not a natural thing to do for some of Mayo's players, maybe to nearly stand out of the play, stand on the end line, 40 yards the far side of the ball, and just occupy a couple of players, same the far side of the pitch, and then you had their runners coming through. So that's something I'm hoping we'll see in the next couple of weeks when teams really do maybe sit back a bit more. Can Mayo work on that? Because that is being talked as you know, maybe a potential issue for Mayo going forward. But some of the other matchups.
Sorry, I was going to say the likelihood is though that they're not going to face too many teams. I mean, maybe some of the Ulster teams might end up in the quarter-final against them, but not too many teams are going to sit back and be that just defensive block and not really try and win the game for the rest of the year for Mayo. That's like the value of this victory, and we've been talking about this a good bit, is they now have games every 2 weeks, all the way up to the quarter-final, assuming that they take care of business against Louth and Cork. Louth is at home in Castlebar, you'd expect them to win that. Cork is going to be at a neutral venue, you'd expect them to win that. And then there's 2 weeks before a quarter-final, and they'll be up against an opponent in that quarter-final who'll have played 3 weeks in a row. It was such a big win.
Yeah, like I felt that before the game. I felt there was an opportunity there for Mayo to take the top seed from Kerry. I've seen before was that Mayo in Super 8 a number of years ago. I was involved, and we finished second in the group when you were going in straight away the week after playing Dublin in the quarter final. Like, it's a difficult thing to do. You need to be in the full of your health. You need to be, you know, refreshed, focused to play some of these top teams who you're going to be meeting at that stage. But I do think in the next couple of weeks there is good. I don't know, are Louth and Cork going to go man to man with Mayo? Maybe they will, but there will be opportunities, I think, for them to sit back and that will see another side of Mayo. Can they break that down? But I've no doubt that they should be able to get through those games. But I'd like to see some learnings as well, because down the line there is going to be a stage when we're not going to hit our conversion rate like we did the last day. It was really high, and we're going to be able to see, can we manage a game, and the team is going to sit back on us. And I could just see something happening there the last day. I suppose Kerry, it's probably not their ideal style of play, but I could definitely see Mayo trying to work something, and I was, I suppose, surprised, and not surprised, I was impressed by that.
Yeah, in fairness,
it's a huge step for Mayo.
And look, there could be Tyrone, there could be Monaghan, there could be Armagh in a quarter final. I mean, maybe it's Galway in a quarter final. We shall see how Galway and Armagh get on against each other. That's maybe the last one that's kind of still up for grabs in terms of those first seeds. Can I just ask you about Kerry, right? Like, there's concern in the Kerry pundits that there's just a hangover from last year, and that you can't talk yourself out of it. But if any team is capable of doing it, you know, there is history for Kerry to have trickiness in an early part of a season, and for them to recover. If they are going to recover, what would need to happen in your view?
I suppose the last time I nearly gone back to Mayo. They didn't hit the pitch of the game against Roscommon. They probably had a good talk about themselves, and they said, this is what we need to bring. I've no doubt Kerry can bring up another couple of levels, intensity wise, mindset wise. I'd imagine the next couple of games they'll get through them, and then will they have that hunger? I suppose they probably want I think they'd want a real tough game at that stage when they get to this preliminary quarter final. I'd say they love the toughest one they could get to really focus their minds. It's been a difficult enough season for them when you look at it. I suppose, was it a third of their team, if not more, were away with club action? They were late coming back into the league. Jack O'Connor was saying from early out, 6 points, we stay up. I suppose then he hoped for themselves that they had reset, they went in a training camp, cruised through Munster, that they were going to be ready for this, but obviously that didn't happen, and it's I still definitely wouldn't write them off. I think that they are. It's been said maybe in some ways that it's a bad thing. They're still essentially the same team that won the All-Ireland last year. David Clifford is still in unbelievable form. Paddy Clifford, the couple of times he got on a couple of balls, he created 2 goal chances. There's probably more in Sean O'Shea. I think, as I said, Mayo's matchups physically and athletically, they were able to match up quite well on them. But there's a lot more in them. Maybe they may have to tweak their plan going forward at the back. Are they going to leave themselves that open, or are they going to meet a team like Mayo that's going to go at them that hard again for a while? So I'd imagine they'll have a big part to play later on the season. And I suppose, unluckily for Mayo, they're not out of the competition, because Mayo have this. And the teams I would have involved in as well, you often find you might beat a team like this, but you're still talking whatever 6, 7, 8, 9 weeks until we get to I'm gone out there.
No,
6,
you're
7,
all right.
8, 9 weeks till we come back again. 6, 7, 8, 9 weeks till we get back to a final. So I'm sure there's going to be another dance in the minute with the big boys, and it'll be interesting to see how they can get themselves up to that level again, because I definitely wouldn't write them off anyway.
We can't have you on, David, without asking about the most pressurised position in Gaelic games, the Mayo goalkeeping position, because there's always a lot of pressure on it. But Colm Reap, I think he got man of the match potentially in the league final against Galway, kicked 3 points that day. A few impressive saves in the second half of the weekend. One in particular comes to mind from David Clifford. Have you been impressed with Colm Reap so far? Because there doesn't seem to be a question over the position, I guess, as there maybe had been in the league.
Yeah, no, which is excellent. I think that first 10-15 minutes, Kerry put a bit of a press on him. And I remember my own time down there, it was in 2019, I was looking out, Kerry had a press on me, and I had Adrian Spillane waving for me to kick the ball on top of him. They weren't really after me that day, and I suppose I remember they got the better of me. But Colm Reap, them first 15-20 minutes, he pinged a couple out the wing, out the terrace side, got me out of trouble, was confident going short. When he felt he needed to go long, he went long. and what was happening, there was no major plan for a break zone, but it was just that raw desire in the middle of the pitch. Jim with O'Connor getting fingertips on top of balls and a break into Mayo men. But I was really impressed with him. His save, a really important time in the game. I think Mayo had hit about, in a period there, Mayo had 3 wides and Kerry had a couple of goal chances. And that was an exceptional save. Positioning was it got down quick. I was trying to watch it back on the replay, and I think David Clifford hit the ball so quick you could barely even see what it hit. He just rebounded out so quick. So he got down really well. Yeah, he's been excellent, in fairness to him. That league final performance, the amount of saves he made, has really, I suppose, cemented his position in the team. It showed really, I suppose. Sorry,
was he always a goalkeeper as a kid now the whole way through?
I think he played. I remember he was one of the top scorers in the league for Knockmore. In his early, maybe 20s, he would have played outfield for Knockmore. He was a free taker, full forward. But I think he would have played soccer in goal. His father would have been a goalkeeper. He was on the Knockmore team that got to a Club All-Ireland. So, he definitely had goalkeeping in him. I suppose some people thought when he came, I think he had to be really, not forced, but he was nearly asked to come back for playing goal for Knockmore a couple of years ago by Ray Dempsey. And they went on and won a couple of county titles. So he hadn't been playing in Knockmore consistently up to maybe 3 or 4 seasons ago when he got consistently playing. But he's really bought into it. Even physically, he's fit, he's strong, he's kicking. He's a lovely little strike of a ball. A couple of steps. Didn't go over for him the last day, but there's no problem with distance, and that's another weapon for Mayo. But and some interesting stuff as well. When I was looking, I know that the thing from the opposition kick out is coming up on the 45, but even as the opposition is coming up the pitch, he's kind of playing as a sweeper in line with the top forward on the opposition. So as they look up, that crossfield ball, he's often cutting that out. There was one good example. I think it was Graham O'Sullivan was coming up the terrace side, and he looked up, and there was David Clifford on the 21, and inside him was Colm Reap. So he's cutting off that crossfield ball, and the ball went down the wing, and Mayo turned it over and went up. So there's something happening there. I think Gary Matthews, who was involved with Dublin a number of years ago, he's come in as goalkeeping coach this season. So he's probably has an influence on that. And in fairness to him, everything he's been asked to do, he's doing top class. And an important save like that is only going to build his confidence even more. I think, in fairness to Kevin as well, in my own time there was a lot of swapping and changing. I suppose he gave everybody a look at the league, but you could see from early on that he liked the look of Fulham. I suppose maybe his club championship form, and that again I suppose would only build confidence, and he's been rewarded with that, so deserves a bit of credit.
We touched this morning, David, on the introduction of this new trial in higher education football of the kick out. So the kick out must go beyond 45 metres before the defending team or the goalkeeper's team can touch the ball. I guess they just want more contests and midfield battles under the high ball. What do you make of this new rule from a goalkeeping perspective, I guess?
Might make it easier as a goalkeeper.
Well, yeah, just launch
less
it.
pressure in the short one. Launch it and hope for the best. It is at times more enjoyable, but I suppose if you do that, sure, next thing the teams will be setting up and giving you the ball on your own 45, and they'll all be back already at the opposite 45. But you could see when the ball was kicked long at times in the last game, a break either way, and it's that set defence is not there. It was a bit more enjoyable to watch, but. I don't know, did they try that a number of years ago as well when I was playing myself years ago in FBD. It'll be worth a try, I suppose, but I suppose so many changes. I didn't think the game was bad the last year. It was interesting to see what the teams are doing with kick-outs. Both teams were pressing for a period. After half-time, Kerry sat back. Did it really make much of a difference to the game?
No.
I think it brings a bit of enjoyment to it, a bit of tactical, mystery to it as well, the way teams are going after teams' kickouts. But it is enjoyable to see the ball be kicked down the middle now and again, and you could see that from both teams that they were willing to do that. But I think that's coming naturally in the last couple of seasons. Teams are more willing to kick it out. You seen Tyrone a number of years ago. That was where some of their best scores from. Kicking that ball on.
They won All Ireland doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So I think it is coming. I don't think we need to force it too much. But It'll be interesting, I suppose, to see how it goes. And but I just be fearful that the way the team's set up, if they wanted to give it to you on the 21, I've no doubt to let you win it on your own 45, and they'll drop back even further. And I don't know, that's not going to be a great spectacle, you know.
No, you got to be careful what you wish for. David, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us.
Okay, man. Good to see you.
It's Dave Clarke there, giving us his thoughts on the weekend's football. If you want to get in touch with us this morning, it is 29 minutes past 8. 087 9180 180 is our WhatsApp number, or you can leave a comment at Off the Ball AM. And OTB AM is live every morning with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition is available now. Will is with us. Time for the Power Rankings.
Some of these critics, these pundits,
I absolutely adore them lads. I have unbelievable time for them, but they're a great bunch, but it's not acceptable.
I'd like to play the hard man when they're on it. It's not very pleasant when you're trying to manage a team. All you're looking for is a bit of civility and a bit of decency, but they just dismiss you like you know, you have nothing to do with the bloody occasion.
Larry Burr, how are you?
How you on, lads? Are you well?
Yeah, what's the crack? It's all coming up awfully.
I don't know. Is it though? I mean, obviously two massive finals coming up, but they have to be won now at this stage. That's what Leo O'Connor was saying after the under-20s won the Leinster final last week against Wexford, and they've got the Joe McDonagh Cup final against Carlow, where I think they'll play a very different team to the one that they lined out in the last round of the group stages, and that's a chance to go back up to the Leinster Championship for Offaly for the first time since 2018, and then they've got a chance to complete the set. They've never won the under-21/under-20 grade. They've won the minor and the All-Ireland Senior in the past, but they've got that opportunity with a team who are probably well ahead of schedule at this stage. Jared, this is 15 of the minor team from last year who are involved in the panel, who've still got 2 more years after this year at under 20 levels. So definitely there's a feeling that they've done extremely well. They would have been expected maybe to contest in Leinster, but to come from tier 2 in the Leinster Championship at the start, to win Leinster last week and then get to an All-Ireland final is remarkable. And I think the ticket sales are already going really well for the 4 counties ahead of what's now going to be a double header at Semple Stadium, the minor and the under-20 final on the Sunday of the bank holiday, which should be a great day for hurling as well.
Yeah, that is great. So, like, obviously the county board chairman is such a messianic figure that he's getting a lot of praise, but there was obviously work going on before he arrived, and he's kind of really helped to empower everybody who's involved in underage hurling and football. So while Duignan gets a good bit of the credit, there was obviously something happening, you know, because they started winning straight away when he got there, and obviously some work had been done before he got there. So what else is happening, Will?
Yeah, I mean, look, to give Michael Duignan credit as well, because people will say, look, obviously the previous regime had to have the building blocks in place before he came in, and now he's reaping all of that work at this stage. He was heavily involved on the fundraising committee for the Faithful Fields, which has been seen as a real cornerstone of this. There's now a training centre which has allowed standards to be improved, and also for players, just talking to them, to have certainty about it, because up until now, many of the teams were having to travel even outside the county for training sessions during the season. Now they've got a base that's as good as any county team has around the country in the Faithful Fields. And then I think you add the feel-good factor on top of it as well, aside from the fact that there were some very good players coming through, and the previous regime had appointed some of the managers that were in place at the start of this successful period in both football and hurling. But you have to take into account the kind of feel-good factor of things like the Shane Lowry sponsorship, the Glenisk sponsorship, all those kind of bits and pieces, and the high standards that have been driven along the way, even to the point that last week Leo O'Connor, the under-20 manager, was making the point that the county board and Michael Duignan had arranged for a Garda escort from Portlaoise to Carlow to ensure that they were there in time for the warm-up, and that there was no possibility that they were going to be stuck in a bus in traffic trying to get to the match. It's those kind of little details, and it's not just Michael Duignan, but it's the current administration that are there that have put those things in place that have actually helped Offaly to climb back up the ladder a little bit. I would say, particularly when it comes to hurling though, you have to be fair in saying that they probably were below their level a little bit when they went to the Christie Ring originally. To have won that, to try and now get out of the Joe McDonagh, they won Division 2A of the league twice but didn't stay up in Division 1 the year that they were up there last. In the football they did get to Division 2 but were relegated back down to Division 3. I think the key is now, if they're to get some of those achievements of the last 3 seasons, say to get up in the top 2 flights in the football, or to get back into Division 1, which they will be next year in the league, the trick now is to actually stay there and not become a yo-yo team. So plenty of progress progress, but probably still plenty more to do as well. Can't help but get a little bit excited about the style of play of this under-20 team, though. They play really, really nice hurling, very progressive hurling. And look, everyone's hyping Adam Screeney at this stage, and the kid at just turned 18 years of age seems to have no problem about the pressure that's put around him as well. A lot of people were marvelling at the scores that he hit down at Dr. Cullen Park against Wexford last week. He has the skills to pay the bills, Ger.
Yeah, don't be hyping the kids though too early in GAA. It's a bit trickier than it is in soccer. One last thing about the senior team. Am I right in saying that they had to beat Kildare in the league final to get the promotion? Like, their 2 seasons have diverged so spectacularly that, like, it's such a tenuous thing, you know. Like, here you are looking up, Kildare looking down, and we can see this in the power rankings. But that turned out to be an absolutely massive sliding doors moment this season.
I agree. I mean, I think 10 or 12 minutes into the game, Kildare looked really impressive in that league final in O'Moore Park, and you're thinking this is the possibility that Kildare are going to go to Division 1 hurling for next season. And then Offaly kind of just slowly but surely wrestled control during the game, and I think one of the key players in that match was Keelan Kiley, who has come back. He's recovered from a concussion after the Kerry game, and I believe he's going to be available to play in the Joe McDonagh Cup final on Saturday evening, which is good for Offaly. I think Owen Cal is also going to be past fit to play, so their 2 most important players will be around this time, and they've really been the cornerstone of the success that the senior team have had this year in the league. Owen Cal scores and Keelan Kiley just kind of driving things from a bit further back down the field. So that win against Kildare certainly seems to have taken the air out of their season entirely. Kildare had such a disappointing campaign in the Joe McDonagh. To be relegated back to the Christie Ring is a huge disappointment. To go from, as you say, a couple of months ago, genuinely looking at going up to the top table of hurling in the league to now dropping down to the third flight is so disappointing for Kildare.
Okay, let's get into the power rankings. The last page: Meath 18, Kildare 17, Down 16, Kerry 15, Laois 14, down 1, Offaly 13, down 1. Why are they down 1? What's there? Is there?
I think you have to respect Carlow's form. Now, I know Carlow were playing against an Offaly team which was heavily weakened in the last round. Carlow scored 31 points on average per game in the Joe McDonagh so far this year. They drew against Kerry and against Laois. They've beaten Offaly, and then they put big scorelines up on everyone else. So Carlow are coming into this final on Saturday afternoon in really good form, and I think they probably should be considered the narrow favourites based on the form they've shown the last 4 or 5 weeks.
All right, you've got Carlow ahead of Offaly. There's nothing. You're not yarring away anything here. I don't think there's any error there. I'd be the first one to say you can't read a huge amount into the game where Carlow were comfortable winners, but Offaly had, I think, only 4 of the starters from the week before against Kerry. So you have to take that into account, but you also have to respect Carlow's form. We're going to just go through this, then we'll come back to it. Antrim are 11, Westmeath are 10, Wexford are 9, Dublin are 8, Waterford are 7. So Wexford, despite the fact they're beaten by Westmeath, are still ahead of them.
Yeah, but I think Westmeath getting a jump in the table respects what they did in the second half of that game at the weekend. I was working it and I just couldn't believe half-time. You're just thinking 16 points. It was 17 points just before half-time. This is dead. At this stage, Wexford are already probably putting one eye, and maybe that was part of it, about trying to ambush Kilkenny next week and still qualify for the All-Ireland series. And then Westmeath win that second half by 4 goals and 13 points to 5 points, which is just unbelievable, really. And like Niall Mitchell, I believe at this stage, he's just come back from knee surgery, so he's far from fit. Now, normally he would start in the half-forward line, but also Westmeath without 2 of their best players in Angus Clarke and also Killian Doyle, their captain, their All-Star nominee from last year. He's not available, so they went very simple tactics for the last 10 or 15 minutes. Niall Mitchell, bring him on, stick him in around the square, and everyone, I think, probably saw the Sunday game, saw what he could do. They got long ball into him, they decided to go remarkably direct, and he somehow pulled the ball into the ice. That'll be the big disappointment for Wexford. It wasn't like they were beaten by 2 stunning goals towards the end of the game. There were 2 goals that probably should have been defended, but it puts Westmeath in a very good position for a 3rd successive year in the Liam McCarthy. And as we know, earlier this year, despite some of the hammerings they took in Division 1A, they still managed to put a performance in against Laois to stay in Division 1 of the Hurling League. So this is sustained for Westmeath, and I'm sure there's going to be plenty of counties, maybe even his native county Wexford, who'll be looking at Joe Fortune at this stage and the job he's done with Westmeath, because to manufacture staying up with the injuries that they've had this year would be a remarkable achievement. I would say it's definitely above even winning the Joe McDonagh a couple of years ago.
Was there any hope before the match, Will, within Westmeath? Do you think that a result like this was close for Westmeath, or was it obviously the hope was gone at half time from their minds, but pre-game, was there any hope in Westmeath?
Well, I think the feeling from talking to some of the players was they drew with Wexford last year in Mullingar, so there was that feeling that if they were going to give a bloody nose to one of the top teams in Leinster, it probably wasn't going to be against Galway or Kilkenny, but still it was a huge ask to go to Wexford Park. Westmeath hadn't beaten Wexford in the championship since 1940. Like, I would put last Sunday down as the best result that Westmeath have ever had at senior hurling, and you add in the fact it's the biggest championship comeback of all time, adds that little bit of a cherry on top for the comeback too. But but like, you kind of thought when Conor McDonald put in the 2 goals, you're thinking Wexford are going to put up a huge scoreline here, and they had raced to 2 goals and 13 points within the game. I didn't see it. Our commentary team, when I was going back to them at half time, were almost groaning, thinking, oh, this could be a 20-point defeat with the way things have gone, but they rallied hugely in that second half, and it makes the relegation situation going into this weekend particularly interesting. Obviously there's been a lot of commentary about what would happen if Wexford were to go to the Joe McDonagh. Wexford will still stay up if they draw, because they would finish ahead of Antrim on head-to-head if that was to happen, but if Wexford were to be beaten by Kilkenny, it's very, very possible that Antrim beat Westmeath in Mullingar. If that happens, Wexford are going into the Joe McDonagh for next year, which I don't think anyone who watched them in an All-Ireland semi-final lads against Tipperary in 2019 would have thought that 4 years later Wexford would be battling on the last day just to stay at All-Ireland level. Yeah,
I don't think there's a piece in the Indo today, I don't have it in front of me, but they're just making the point that this shouldn't be the case. That, like, you can't have Wexford dropping down. They've had an injury crisis, and really, it's not like that. Surely this is not the whole point of this.
Well, are you saying then that relegation should be put off? Like, what about teams who've been relegated in the last few years, like Lee, Shoffley, Westmeath, Carlow, Antrim, Kerry?
Martin Brownlee says it's ridiculous. Because
why though? Because of Wexford's history.
I think specifically it's an injury crisis. This isn't that the game's gone in Wexford, and they're not doing an Offaly.
That's European. That's Super League stuff. Keeping Wexford in just because they're Wexford.
Yeah, but we on this very slot many times we've talked
circumstances.
We've spoken, lads, about the fact that there has to be a pathway for teams to try and close the gap with the top. So if we get to a point where there's protectionism, which there already is in the Munster Championship where there's no relegation, if we get to a point where Leinster doesn't have relegation just because Wexford have fallen into trouble in one season, does that not rip away the entire integrity of the competition?
Well, there needs to be a plan made somehow to fix this. It does feel like there's lip service paid to promoting hurling in the counties outside the top tier anyway. But look, we have 5 minutes left and we haven't even got the first page here.
I know, but hurling is promoted ridiculously strongly in Wexford. If it is a case of just one bad season and we take the injuries they've had and right down the spine of their team, they have had a lot of injuries, Wexford will surely go to the Joe McDonagh next season and will come straight back up.
Yeah. What if next season is the last season that we get to see all their great players play one great season and they don't even get the opportunity to compete?
Well, then they have to rebuild. They were in a Leinster under-20 final only last week, so if it means that new players have to come in to replace that old blood, if it means they have to have a change of management, so be it.
Cry me a river, says Larry Bird. Cry me a river. An awfully shaped river all the way down.
I've watched this happen, lads, so
Die the Slaney. Listen, page 1, right?
Yeah.
So Waterford haven't moved. I think Waterford are actually below Dublin at this stage, given that Dublin are going to be still in the All-Ireland series more than likely at the end of all this.
I did consider that, and in fairness to Dublin, this has been a good first campaign under me all as well, to be assured going into the last weekend that they're in the All-Ireland series at the very least. They can have a shot at Galway this weekend, and if they beat Galway, they could go to a Leinster final. So I think
you might be the highest person on Waterford in the country at the moment. Are you just trying to balance out Scahill?
I don't know about that. There's even a few people who are trying to claim on our live stream in the hurling pod at the weekend, and this seems to be the idea. Maybe Davy's got a plan for Tipperary this weekend. Maybe Waterford have a kick, even though they've nothing to play for.
Well, how low? You can't put Waterford any lower than just below Dublin.
I think 8th would be fair. We did consider, because we kind of consulted on this within the group as to where we were going to put them. We did consider putting them to 8th. I think once Dublin go through to the All-Ireland series, next power rankings is a good chance.
Is this the consensus rankings from the hurling pod?
Absolutely not. There was no consensus to be found, because Scahill again fumed about the fact that Galway are sitting in 5th, despite the fact they've gone up just after beating Antrim in the last round, who they would have been expected to beat, and Murphy was making an argument for Kilkenny still being in 2nd. So
Limerick are 1.
There was consulting a little bit.
Limerick are 1, Clare are 2, Kilkenny are 3, Tip are 4, Galway are 5, and Cork are 6. Cork are down 2. So you think Cork are going out this weekend?
I do. I can't see Cork beating Limerick at the weekend. It's unfortunate because Cork have been really entertaining in the Championship so far, and this is a good Cork team, but this is the cutthroat nature of the Munster Championship, where at least one good team was going to miss out on a place in the All-Ireland series, and I think Limerick are going through in third, and both Carlow and Offaly won't want to draw them in a preliminary quarter-final. Limerick will remember that in 2018, lads, they came through from this position, third in Munster, won the All-Ireland Championship, and they could potentially do that again, despite the fact that obviously they haven't performed to the standard that maybe we would have expected at the start of the Championship. I still think Limerick will have enough for Cork this weekend, and that's harsh on Cork, who've drawn against a very good Tipperary team, were within a puck of a ball against Clare at the weekend. But importantly, I think Clare should have won by a bigger margin than just that long Dermot Ryan point. I thought Clare were very much in control in the second and third quarters of that game. They'd be disappointed with some of the goals they conceded against Cork. I think unfortunately for Cork, who I had a good fancy for going into Championship to qualify, they're going out this weekend.
Clare have gone up one, as you said, Will, from third to second, but are they unlucky not to be top of the pile at the moment? I know Limerick, of course, everyone still expects to go on and maybe lift Liam McCarthy, but I mean on very recent form, Clare could be number one.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. I think first and second are as close as they've been since the Munster final last year. Clare's record in the Munster Championship round robin is intimidating. They've played 16 games and won 11 of them. They're ahead of even Limerick over the course of the 4 round robins. The next step for Clare is to build on that and win a piece of silverware, whether that be the Munster Championship in a few weeks' time. They're qualified for the final. They've got the last weekend off to put their feet up, have a look at the opposition around them. Looks like there's a strong chance that Tipperary will qualify for the final, and Liam Cahill is going to be suspended, not just from the sideline for that Munster final, but from preparing the Tipperary team for the 4 weeks to come. So we'll see what impact that has. I don't know how that's policed. I'm not sure when Dan Shanahan got a similar ban for Laois a few weeks ago, that was policed, that he couldn't be at trainings and so on. But if Liam Cahill doesn't win his appeal against that suspension, it means that Tipperary will be without their manager for a possible Munster final. Clare came so close to winning the Munster Championship final last year. They would love to get that silverware, go directly on a path to an All-Ireland semi-final, and potentially avoid Tipperary further on within the Championship as well. I think Kilkenny in third is just the fact that they're motoring along. Again, they kept Dublin at arm's length at the weekend. They're pretty much through to a Leinster final, and they've got the chance, and Paul Murphy was keen to point this out, to bury Wexford at the weekend, and he thinks that's enough motivation for Kilkenny to go for the win.
Wow, that is... Yeah. Wow.
Well, Wexford have won a couple of games against them recently, Ger.
Recently, they've won about 2 in 100 years, it feels like, and that is like saying the quiet bit out loud. Wow.
Oh yeah, I had to press him on it on the live show at the weekend. It was, will Kilkenny have the motivation to beat Wexford, even if Kilkenny know they're pretty much into a Leinster final? It would take a huge mathematical change in scoring for them not to qualify, and he said this is a chance to put Wexford down.
Okay, sorry, one last thing for you. Kilkenny's path to the All-Ireland now is more than likely going to feature Limerick in a semi-final if they get over Galway in the Leinster final. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a strong possibility. It takes away that certainty that you would have had in the last few years where Limerick were winning Munster Championships. If you knew you won Leinster, you go the other side of the draw. Limerick aren't an issue until you get to an All-Ireland final. This time round, though, because Limerick will go into the preliminary quarterfinals, they can go back into your stream again. So for Kilkenny, the benefit of winning the Leinster Championship will be to avoid Clare or Tipperary. But I think winning your provincial still has the big advantage of going directly to a semi-final. I think we saw the freshness for both Kilkenny and Limerick was important in the semis last year. Clare definitely looked like the tank had been emptied in their run to an All-Ireland semi-final. So I think even if it means that Limerick are a potential opponent if Limerick come through the longer path, you'd still prefer to be straight into a semi-final, I think.
Is it guaranteed that the losers of the... No, it's not guaranteed. Nothing's basically guaranteed except that the Leinster will play the third place team in Munster. The beaten Leinster... Am I right about that? Am I mixing that up?
No, so the third team in Munster and the third team in Leinster will be drawn against one of the two Joe McDonagh winners in a preliminary quarter-final. I'm not sure exactly how the quarter-finals shape up after that, but we have to wait to see the draw to see which side they're going to go.
Okay, all right. Will, good stuff. Thanks a million.
Enjoyed it. Thanks, lads.
More from Will, of course, on the Hurling Pod, and you can get that wherever you get your podcasts. And obviously those live Sunday evening streams are going great guns. Make sure you tune into that. Right. OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition is available now. It's 8:47. John Duggan is here. John, good morning to you.
Ger and Shane, how are we both doing?
All good. How are you keeping, John?
What would you like to talk about?
There's a lot to talk about, isn't there?
Yes. Where'd you like to start?
Oh, well, you pick.
You haven't been on since the Leinster game, have you?
No.
You were on Saturday itself.
You were at it.
I was there, yeah. anchoring. Leinster kind of turned into Claremont.
Oh,
remember when Claremont were going through all those close matches?
Ger's heart just broke.
And Toulon game and the Leinster semi-final, and they never had won one.
See, the weird thing is that like a load of these players have multiples, you know. Well, not a load of them, but a load of them were in Bilbao and won that day, and that was a tight game where against the Moneybags French team, and they got over the line. Obviously, there was significant change in playing staff since, but
they had the discussion on the show during, was it Monday Night Rugby, where they asked, are Leinster underrated or overrated?
Well, for all the dominance they've had, one European Cup in over a decade is a poor return.
Yeah.
You'd have to
very poor considering their squad.
I don't want to say very poor, but once again, I know he's had a couple of bad World Cups, but it does once again always point Schmidt in a better light, you know, to win back-to-back European Cups as he did. Now he was once again inheriting the Cheka team and the generational talents like
Brian O'Driscoll.
Yeah, exactly.
And Sexton.
If
you take O'Driscoll and Sexton in the team at the weekend, I think they get over the line.
Well, Sexton, Ryan Furlong, none of them were on the pitch at the end of the game. But I just don't know, with the second half, just Leinster seemed to lose a bit of control and composure. And you could just feel that they were out on their feet. And to me, the losing of the game was the fact that they were only 9 points up at half time. They should have been 25 points up.
It certainly felt like ominous when La Rochelle were coming back into the game. But anyway, we're about to do more rugby with Derek McNamara. Okay. So is there any of the football you want to talk about? Or?
Well, Clare obviously in the Munster final is great from anybody who likes Clare. It's 25 years since Clare won a Munster final. And if it's Tipperary, it's said to be down in Porky Queeve. That seems to be the feeling. And I think, as Will said, what Clare made the mistake in last year is that they were out of gas by the time they got to the semi-final. So we'll wait and see what happens. But hurling feels very open to me at the moment. You really think that 4 or 5 teams, any one of those could win an All Ireland. Apart from the football, look, Evan Ferguson is the toast of the town, and he's got 6 goals in 17 Premier League games. So still to play 90 minutes in a Premier League game, and he could face Manchester City this evening.
They're doing a great job of managing him.
They are
really.
It's really important, I think, that Ferguson and De Zerbi stays, and Ferguson just, because you're going to have all the BS now over the next 3 months relentlessly every single day on the back pages of the Red Tops. And it's going to be infuriating and annoying linking Ferguson with 50 million.
Well, Mourinho's a fan, apparently. Roma want him.
Mourinho's not going to be at Roma. He's going to be the PSG manager. Possibly. So does he go to PSG and replace Mbappe?
Yeah. So, and also great for the cyclists. Eddie Dunbar now 5th in general classification, the Giro d'Italia. Ben Healy's king of the mountains. So, something we can't ignore either.
Well, and their age profile.
Yes. Like Healy's only 22, Dunbar 26.
It's amazing.
Jeez.
So it is definitely a feel-good story of so many stories this week. I still think Leinster is a story, Raj is a story, and you're going to get to that now.
Brian just said last night, Paul O'Connell slightly ahead of O'Gara in terms of the pecking order for the Ireland job.
I can understand Brian's thinking, but if you were to compare what O'Gara has done to what Paul has done, like, it's hard to compare. But I think Ronan O'Gara could be managing the Cork Hurlers, the Irish soccer team. He could be managing anything because he's
the people man.
But he's got the X factor. And to win 2, as you said, I think earlier on in the week, Ger, to win 2 Champions Cups with a club that doesn't really have that much of a history in the game, La Rochelle, to go to Dublin to play the juggernaut that is Leinster, and they are a juggernaut at home, and to win it, and then to be, what I love about Ronan O'Gara is complete lack of defensiveness, the openness there, and he is a one-off, and if you have a one-off that anybody'd want, he has to be in the mix to be the next Ireland coach.
It's true.
And also, we can't, it's a great fun conversation, right? But Andy Farrell as well has done nothing wrong.
Oh, no, I think this is like post-Farrell when Andy Farrell decides.
And that's...
After Farrell wins the World Cup, Rog can take over.
I think we are in a much better place in terms of our coaching after the weekend. We're in a bit of a more of a worrying place when it comes to our team for the World Cup, because this was not a good day for Ireland, I don't think, on Saturday.
Expectations have been checked somewhat.
Yes.
John, good stuff. More from John, of course, on Saturday afternoon on Off the Ball on News Talk. OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition is available now. Derek McNamara of React Rugby is with us to reflect on the Champions Cup final defeat. Derek, you've crunched the numbers.
I have.
Yeah, it didn't go quite.
Still lost.
It didn't go quite the way the preview suggested it would.
No, it didn't. No, and I'll get into kind of like the more nitty gritty of it. I think a couple of things that I said last week, just around, injuries would have a massive impact on the game. They did. Ireland were well up before the major injury happened, which we'll get into. But look, when you boil it down to it,
you Freudian slip there with Ireland and Leinster. We'll come back to that. Yeah, Leinster were well up before.
Yeah, I'm still on an Ireland high. I think, but look, when you boil it down, okay, when we look at it from a analytical perspective, from a performance perspective, in rugby we've kind of like got two types of sports, or two types of rugby in Ireland. We've got our international, where you've got maybe 10 to 12 meaningful games a year, where these teams are trying to hit peak level for every single game. And I think we may have butted heads a little bit like this, against even like Italy. The coaching staff and the team themselves are trying to go out and play at peak performance every single game. Even if they're playing against Italy, they're trying to change their team specifically to try and improve the game on game, week on week. But then when we got something like professional rugby, where it's more of a trying to peak for a certain type of or period of the actual year, then I think that's slightly different in that you're trying to use as many players as you can to get into the playoffs. But once you get into those playoffs, once you get into those post-season, you treat it exactly the same as you would for an international level, where you play your best team, you try and improve, you try and take small incremental gains using the best players that you have, and you learn from those games. Even if they went out and played against Munster and lost and got injuries, even if they got an injury against James Ryan at that Munster game, they would have learned from it and they would have improved as a result.
Can I just point out that I think there's a flaw in that logic, which goes back to the point where you said that the James Ryan injury is the crucial moment from a Leinster perspective.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't tally with it would have been okay if he'd got injured against Munster.
But see, we'll go into it now in a minute. We've got some graphs to show the impact of that injury during the game. Had he not played the entire week, then they would have the game plan would have changed significantly, and the people who are responsible for the different things, whether it's defensive line calls, whether it's line out calls, whether it's all these different things, they would have been talked about, organised, and actually improved.
There's such a well-coached team that they know what to do whenever the replacement hooker is off, to the point where we saw Josh van der Flier thrown in the Six Nations, but actually he'd done it before for Leinster, so it wasn't a shock.
He did it at the weekend as well.
Exactly, that's my point, is that this is a team who has prepared for the eventuality that James Ryan might go off and get injured, because he gets injured sometimes. So
of course, yeah.
The point about during the week they would have prepared for that eventuality. They did prepare for that. I've no doubt that they prepared. It's just that the pressure of the final or whatever.
Well, also,
you can't replace James Ryan, it turns out.
Yeah, correct. But if you could replace James Ryan had you prepared for it, and had you actually put in place a. But they couldn't actually change that. Anyway, we'll get into it a little bit more
to go back to the point, because the team that played against Munster, the back row that ended up playing the vast majority of the game was Max Deegan, Josh van der Flier, World Player of the Year, and Jack Conan. The team was strong enough. Ronan Kelleher started at 2. Jimmy O'Brien started at fullback. Henshaw played the full game. Charlie Natai basically played the full game. Harry Byrne is supposed to be good enough, but played a bad game against Munster. I think that it's risk reward. The reward was players were fresh. The vast majority of the team were fresh, and that they had basically no injury worries heading into the final, with the exception of Sexton.
So by them
also proved.
So them putting out a kind of mismatch of team against Munster, right? The problem with that, and the main significant issue with that is that it's an overall problem for the club and the team. So the players that aren't first team players that lost all of a sudden have no way of redeeming themselves in the following week. But that's the players that did play added more pressure onto the team because there was nothing else left.
Well, more pressure. How can there be more pressure?
That was the first time they'd lost.
Champions Cup final though, at home. I do think that perhaps dealing with the pressure in the week and talking about the previous season's disappointment ended up being a psychological issue. But again, very hard to measure the analytics on that.
Is there a perfect amount of strength and depth? Do Leinster have too much strength and depth, if you get me?
No, because the season's a very long season. You've got an 18-season game, and then you've got a 6-game season with our club cup competition with the possibility of 9 games. So the actual having the amount of depth that you need to be able to get to the final or semi-final of both of those organisations is what their strength is. But the problem is that if you're trying to reward those players, even when it gets to the key part of the season, it's about performance, it's about grit, it's about being absolutely ruthless in what you do. And you could see the Rog getting that out of his team, out of his players, stuff that doesn't even matter. You know what I mean? Like going to the stadium, of course you're going to get fans flipping off the team. It's that's the nature of the sport. It's a barbarian sport that is entertaining, and what we go to see is and it's. But
they use it brilliantly.
Yeah, and that is probably, and like what we're talking about here, quintessentially is coaching. Okay, and the other thing that we kind of looked at as well is from an analytical perspective is we look at certain things in the game that we can kind of distinguish whether or not a team has given the right feedback at half time. So in the second half, there was quite a few HIAs, or at least possible head traumas. There was quite a lot of missed tackles, and there was obviously the 2 yellow cards. All 3 of those things together would suggest that there was much more of a go out there and put the sword to them, lads, when in reality it was probably best to be like, okay, well, we're 9 points ahead here, let's focus, let's bring it all together and let's push on. But because of these different things, it would suggest that the team talk at half time probably wasn't the right way to go ahead.
There's a chance that the players just didn't enact the team talk that was intended.
Potentially, and look, we're talking about fine margins. We're talking about the final of the Hurling Cup as well. So.
That's the thing. Like, if Crowley misses the kick the previous week, or if Frawley makes the kick, or if Harry Byrne takes the kick, then they manage the team perfectly. They manage the resource perfectly.
But they didn't, and this is the second time they've done it. And when you look at the difference between what O'Gara says and the amount of pressure that he takes off the team by putting himself out in front, he would have been probably the butt of quite a lot of jokes had they not gone on, had Leinster gone on to win it. But because he's able to actually take all that pressure off the team, and he's able to make the focus on himself, but be quite coherent and be quite poignant on what he's saying, he's able to bring the players and get the absolute physical most, because the players, the data would suggest that Leinster have better players. But anyway, we can go into a little bit more.
Let's get into the information.
So, there's this review of the final that it was probably the best final that has been. But when you watch it back in slow motion, like I do, I think it probably would suggest it was great show, and it was a great ending. But from a performance perspective, the actual level of rugby wasn't that great. The passing wasn't great, the breakdowns, the actual overall, there's quite a lot of mistakes from both sides.
I would suggest
you get at a final.
Yeah, exactly. That's pressure. That's the whole point of pressure. That's like that is. How do you measure the pressure? Because it's the occasion is obviously, if these two sides were playing for nothing in a pre-season friendly, a lot of those mistakes don't happen.
I know, but
kicks don't get sliced.
But you would have. What it would suggest is that one side was better than the other. I think Leinster probably played better overall, but when we look at the data, and anyway, we can go into so to try and identify specifically what went wrong, we look at the game from start to finish, and we cut it into kind of 2 sections: first half and second half. And then we grade every player's interaction based on the accuracy or the quality or the positioning or the technique of a player's performance, whether that's the ruck, whether it's a pass, whether it's tackle, line out, lift, whatever it is. And then what we can do is we can then split that first half and second half into 3 sections. So the graph that we have here kind of shows the quality of the performance in the first half and the second half. And what we see here is that...
Which team is this, sorry?
This is Leinster in the final, okay? So basically what we can see for people at home that are listening, basically we have a line, 2 lines, the first line showing the first half and the second line showing the second half. And when we go on to the second slide here, we can see...
go on.
We can see specifically where James Ryan came off injured. So Leinster were playing very, very well, and then there's a significant drop off in the quality of the performance.
The line is really high on the graph, and then James Ryan goes off, and then the line collapses.
And then if we go to the next slide, we can see the same players' performance. So we basically took the starting 15 from, I think it was like 8 or 9 games, the last 8 or 9 games that all these players have been involved in, and then we do a comparison, and we can see the blue line, which is the Leinster players prior to the final, and then we can see the impact of James Ryan as he went off. And basically what it shows is that in 3 or 4 of the sections of the 6, Leinster played significantly worse than what they would have done if they were playing with James Ryan. And what does that mean, or what is the actual, like, what are the effects of that? And that's James Ryan being the leader at the line-out. That's James Ryan being the main voice in defence. It's James Ryan organising players once they're getting up off the ground. The impact that he had was, really, really, really important.
Work rate, as you say, that's involvement per player.
Yeah, so that's every player's activity. So we can look at work rate from different aspects. We can look at it as a plain simple grade, quality, or we can see it as a work rate. So we can say, okay, well, one activity is equal to another. So a pass is equal to a tackle. And then we can split it into technical, physical, mental, and tactical as well. So we can say, okay, well, if a player has a dominant tackle, we can give that player a score of a 2. If he misses, we can give him a -1. Okay, so then we can then build where these players lie, or what the actual performance output is of the team. And when James Ryan came off, everything went to pot. And there was other things that happened in the game that were specific to, not just specific to James Ryan, but the defensive shape changed quite a bit. The team became quite more passive in the defensive line as well. The kick chase was really, really, really passive. With the defensive line being passive, with O'Gara's or La Rochelle's attacking shape, they do quite a lot of around the corner. You probably would have seen. You probably don't see it on the TV, but you see it live. And what that comes from comes from touch rugby, which is massive in New Zealand, where the players try to overload one side of the ball if the ball is in midfield, and as a result causing overlaps.
Do we do a bit of that with Ireland?
We do. We do.
Blind sides?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, definitely.
Didn't notice any of it.
But it's more. It's just working harder off the ball. The attacking players need to work, and it's basically 3 guys go from left to right. Ruck is in the middle of the pitch, and the first guy gets it, straightens, then pass it on. If you're way too passive on that, then basically you're going to get a defensive or overlap on you. And then the second thing that was kind of significant as well was that the kick chase was very passive as well. So when we were stuck in our own half in the second half,
it was basically down to Hugo Keaton.
Boot the ball down. Bryce Doolan
or Jimmy O'Brien would be the only ones chasing.
Yeah, but what happened was Doolan was able to catch the ball, run 20 metres, then kick it, and then put pressure under the catcher.
Yeah.
And as a result, stop dead, you can't get out of your 22. It just repeats itself. So there must be some. I'd love to see the GPS data for this, because I don't think because La Rochelle plays so narrow.
Is it not fatigue from making a gazillion tackles though?
But there wasn't that many gazillion tackles.
Did we not make 288 tackles, or is there 80 tackles or something?
I can't tell you right now. Okay, I don't have that data here.
We definitely made way more tackles than...
They had 61% of the possession. So they had...
La Rochelle had 61%.
They had 100 breakdowns, and we had 60... Or Leinster, I shouldn't say weeks. Anyway, Leinster had 63 breakdowns. La Rochelle contested 62 of those breakdowns, 62%.
Was that more than you expected?
No, it's right on point where they were during the season. So they didn't change their game plan. They didn't put Leinster on any more pressure than they did. And then Leinster competed at 50%, just under 50% of the La Rochelle breakdowns. So the other things that were kind of very, very strange was just uncontested lineouts. So I think Leinster, so of the 15 lineouts that La Rochelle had, Leinster only contested 2 of them at the end of the game, and
they got a penalty on one of them.
Camino, they got a penalty off a maul, which was very unusual. So, not that I want to pick on or go about the referee, because look, I heard, listen to the 42 there yesterday, just about talking about the referee and how disgusting it is going after the referee during and after the game. And I completely agree. I completely 100% agree. But there needs to be more done by the officiating. There just needs to be more. Like, there was a couple of very, very unusual calls. I think that one of the bigger ones was around the catch of Jimmy O'Brien in the, what was it, 64th minute. I know, Jimmy O'Brien. And then, there was a maul against La Rochelle, which was on the 64th minute, where the maul was moving forward and the defensive Leinster player was bound onto it, but the referee called a penalty against La Rochelle for offside.
Yeah.
There was like 3 or 4 of these that, these things happen all the time in the game. For the referee to call it at that point was very unusual.
The only thing you'd say about Piper at the weekend was that it seemed to balance out. Like, James Tracy seemed fairly okay with the refereeing.
I thought he had a great game, especially at the breakdown. There could have been a couple of more penalties in the game, and the turnover. There was kind of 2 major incidents that I saw in the game, and they were at 66 minutes. Leinster losing their control, or getting a little bit too passive when there was a scrum, and they didn't go for route 1 in the scrum, and so they just put the ball in, and Alatoa was turned, the ball spilled out the side and got a turnover. The other significant one was Ringrose in 76 minutes, just before the Alatoa red card. He comes onto the ball too quickly, and as a result, he should have passed. He had three guys outside him, and that would have been a man-on-man against the La Rochelle defenders. It would have been a perfect man-on-man situation. But those 2 instances, and there's literally tens of thousands of things that happen in the game that we measure, but had either of those 2 things changed, or had just a little bit more concentration, or a little bit more as a team defined decision making, then I think that the actual results probably would have been a little bit different.
How did Harry Byrne do? Sorry, not Harry Byrne, Ross Byrne.
Not great. So we have one last graphic representation, which is, so this basically, when we take all the grades from all the players, we then aggregate them from front row, second row, back row, half back, centre and back 3. And what you'll see for the people at home, the blue line represents all the players in the 7 or 8 games that we've analysed before, and the yellow line indicates the players that started for the final. And what you'll see is the front row and the second row had a brilliant game. Like, James Ryan was having probably the best game of his career. He was absolutely man-possessed. And the back row are identical, but the problems lie and the issues are around the half-back, centre and back 3. They just did not perform, unfortunately. And that's down to the defensive play of La Rochelle as well. You got to take into account that La Rochelle, amazing game,
back-to-back European champions here.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant game plan,
going to be spoken about in the future as all-time greats.
But see, so Leinster play a very, very flat game plan, and when you get a defensive strategy that blitzes that defensive game plan, and the player isn't able to make the decision, then it stops everything outside them from actually happening, the thing that they happen. And this is what happened. This is what happened throughout the entire game. Basically, at the start of the half, obviously, the tries were scored. They came off 9, and they came off a line out. I think there's only one that came off the back line. So there needs to be the ability more within the sport to change the actual game plan that you implemented. And that's where we come in. That's where React Rugby is trying to improve and help and enhance the ability of the coaches to make better decisions throughout the game and get more informed decision making onto the players, so that the coaches can have a bigger impact on the game.
is this a concern for Ireland? That so Adrian was saying he was watching the New Zealand coverage. Mills Mullane and John Kerwin were like, well, this is a good template for everybody now watching Ireland. I'm just like, it's basically Ireland. So
yeah, it was the last chance that any team had to figure it out, and they were figured out. But had we played our first team against Munster,
I don't think that matters. I really don't think that matters.
It does. I guarantee it does.
But if say 5 of them get injured, right? How are you then suddenly going, oh great, we have a bunch of players who haven't played for the first team all season playing in this game? It's like it's when they were running in their first 3 tries, were you like, well, this team looks undercooked?
No, but again, you okay, the worst things, as I was going to Lou and I heard James Ryan come off, and I heard it, I was like, oh no, like that, we couldn't have got a worse injury, and it was such a like, it wasn't even it was an offload from a tackle, and he fell on the ground. Somebody ran past him. It wasn't malicious.
Yeah.
It wasn't bad. It was just bad timing, bad situation.
Yeah.
But I you know, what are the chances of O'Gara going to New Zealand as a consultant or one of these things?
Going to the World Cup for Ireland?
Yeah, no, against Ireland.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, then we'd be grand. We'd be grand here.
Well, we should just pay him to be our consultant.
Yeah.
But what if Ross Byrne makes the kicks? Like, do you know what I mean? Then all of this is moot, and it's a great gritty performance. And
my auntie had balls, she'd be uncle.
Yeah, but true, but then that's the same point about picking a different team last week.
I know, but we don't know
exactly. But we do know that if we made the kicks, they would have won by a point.
If you look at any sport, okay, you look at any sport. You look at soccer. You look at NFL. You look at volleyball, tiddlywinks. You play your best players, no matter what.
You don't.
It's more important.
The Mayo had 5 weeks off and beat Kerry, the All Ireland champions, who played their best players the 3 previous weeks against inferior opposition, and it didn't matter.
But it's not. It's. That's okay if it's mid-season. That's okay if you've already made the playoffs. But if it's worth significant financial impact on your team, if it's worth a trophy at the 2 games, if you have 2 games left and you have maximum 3, you play your best players, no matter what.
The players they played were good enough to beat Munster. But then
they weren't. They didn't. They lost.
They were good enough to beat Munster, but they just didn't execute. They played badly, and they They couldn't get the restart right.
Yeah.
That's not coaching. That's like brain fart from 2 players brain farting at the very end. Oh, you're ahead of me. I shouldn't take this off. Oh, I shouldn't be ahead of you.
No, but see, that is. But then again, that is. So Harry and Ross have different kickoff techniques. So that is.
They've all played all season. Like,
no, they haven't.
Ryan Baird has played with Harry Byrne loads all season. There's no reason for him to run past it. There's no
absolutely.
reason.
But the problem with that is that if you're chasing the game and you're playing with a bunch of players that you haven't played with all season.
But that team have played loads together.
No, they haven't. That 15 that started probably never played together.
But loads of the combinations had.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, so with the exception of the first team, which plays in all the big games.
Had you played your Irish team, the team that had played in the Six Nations together, had played against Toulouse the week for. Like, it's good debate.
Yeah, I disagree with you, but that's all right.
That's all right.
Yeah,
we're still friends.
Derek, good stuff. More at React Rugby. What's your Twitter handle?
Derek at React Rugby, I think. Derek Mack at React. But LinkedIn is the place to find.
Okay, all right, okay. 9:15, OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Edition is available now. Some highlights on the OTB Podcast Network today. Brian O'Driscoll from last night's show. We've got the Hurling Pod with Will and the lads, and Tony Cascarino will play some of that in a few minutes' time. Make sure you follow us across our social channels and subscribe to the OTB Podcast Network. After the ad break, Seani Maguire on this week's episode of the Koi Gig Podcast. Emma Byrne, Karen Duggan and Kathleen talked to WSL Player of the Year nominee Una Beatty on what it's like to play under Mark Skinner.
You're listening
to OTB AM.
Have you subscribed to the OTB Football Podcast?
Someone from down the country tells you to F off. You give out to them, you'll go, don't speak to me like that. That's not acceptable. But if someone from Dublin does it, he actually doesn't. He's not telling you.
This is culture bias. This is bias against culture.
Yeah, but
so we can't say it, but you can say it.
Yeah, so it's part of our DNA and our language. It's completely different. It's using your own language.
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts, and download the OTB Sports app.
You have the most assists of any defender in the league, and sometimes we talk about it on the podcast saying that United should use you more. Do you ever get frustrated with the style of play you play, or do you feel like you fit into Mark Skinner's plans and it gets the most out of you?
I mean, I feel like we don't really have just one way to play. So I think we've tried to use as many possible solutions, or just different ways to win the game, or just try to win the games. But I think I really suit on the style and the how we want to play. And I think this year, for example, it's been shown that I've been able to go more forward, and I could as well assist and be there for the team.
Is there anyone on the team in particular that you enjoy linking up with, and why do you enjoy linking up with them in that way?
I mean, I really like, for example, to play with Alessia Russo. We are always like training together. Just, I don't know, like crossing. She wants always to finish. I just always want to cross. So I think we have a good connection. But as well, for example, with Lucia, which I think we have kind of similar style, like quick, super explosive. So when we are together in the wing, we really enjoy it.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Yeah, so I completely butchered the pronunciation of Unabatier there, but that was this week's episode of Koi Gig, where Emma, Karen and Kathleen were talking to the WSL Player of the Year nominee Unabatier and what it's like to play under Mark Skinner. The Koi Gig pod on Off the Ball is in association with Cadbury FC, official snack partner to the Republic of Ireland women's national team. Now, I am delighted to say our next guest is with us, Seani Maguire. Good morning to you, how are you?
How are you, lads? All good, how are you?
What's the crack with you?
Not on board. I'm just back up in Preston now. The manager gave us a day off today, so we've had a good couple of days training Monday, Tuesday, and then off today, and then prepare ourselves tomorrow and Friday for the game on Saturday.
And I guess the atmosphere ahead of a massive playoff like this is both excitement and a little bit of nervousness.
Yeah, I think it probably hasn't sunk in with the boys yet. Because the last probably couple of months, probably no one expected Coventry to sneak the way into the playoffs. I think we went on a mad run. I think we lost one game in 20. We saw ourselves kind of just edge ourselves into the playoffs like the last 2-3 weeks of the season, which was brilliant. The home support, the way sport's been unreal since I've been here, and long may that continue into Saturday.
Have you had many Wembley experiences over the course of your career, Seani, or?
Just one when obviously I was in the Irish squad against England during COVID. We have a strange one that I was on the bench. I think we lost 3-0. I was on the bench for that game. But other than that, I don't even think I've been to a Wembley game to watch a game. So this will be my probably first proper one involved in something like Wembley.
Richest game in football as well. Like for a team like Coventry, you've had a little bit of top flight pedigree, I guess, across the years. There must be some serious excitement in the city as well.
Oh, it's brilliant. I think somebody said 2001 was the last time they were in the top flight of English football, and 5 years ago they were in a League 2 playoff final. I was speaking to my buddy Peter Sweeney. He actually played in that final for Exeter against Coventry, and to see, the rise in, the football club from 5 years ago playing in League 2 to potentially playing in the Premier League is fairy tale stuff.
Where did the mad run come from? When you joined, I think they were 13th in the table. Is that about right?
Yeah, I was speaking to Luke the other day about this. He said I think we were 15th.
Right.
So I think we've lost two in 23, 24 games, which is remarkable considering it's the championship, the most competitive league probably in Europe. It's relentless, like game after game, and to only lose 2 games in that short amount of time, especially 5 months, it's a lot of credit to the manager, the boys, and it's unbelievable the run that we've actually gone on.
What do you put it down to? Like, is everybody just confident and feeling themselves and understanding each other? Was it like any idea? I know if you can answer this question really well, you're going to be an absolute gazillionaire as a manager down the line. But what?
I don't know. The togetherness within the squad is probably the best I've seen. To be honest, and in football, the more you win games, the more you go on a run, the more confident you get, and you get like the likes of like Victor Jokeres scoring every week, Gustavo Hamer. I'd say probably the two best players in the league and the last, since I joined Coventry, they've been unbelievable. When you get them two boys firing, we can beat anyone out there. But it's not just about them two. I think we've a really good squad, got some really, really good players, and the manager has got us playing in a way that is just fluid. And I think we go into the last couple of months thinking we can win pretty much any game, home or away, because we got different setup for being at home, different setup for being away. But obviously it's going to be different kettle of fish now at Wembley on Saturday. We've drew against Luton twice this year, so it'll be a really tight game.
You mentioned the manager there, Mark Robbins. I think all Manchester United fans will remember him for scoring the goal in 1990 against, I think it was Forest in the FA Cup that saved Alex Ferguson's career at the time as manager. Went on to play for Norwich and Leicester among other clubs. Was a striker as well, Seani, Mark Robbins. So is that something that you've been able to utilise in terms of words of advice and little nuggets of information from someone like him as manager?
Yeah, definitely. He does take his strikers away 2 or 3 times a week to work on finishing, working on movement and stuff like that. And I feel a lot sharper since I've joined the football club in January. Obviously, you said that he's played at the highest level. He's been there and done that, and I suppose to get different tips and different kind of things from him has definitely helped me. I know I've only played maybe about 7 games, been involved in 7 games this season, but I've been really enjoying playing under him, training with him every day. And as you say, like, he's brought the club from League 2 to the Premier League in the space of 5 years. That's unbelievable. I don't think you'll see that every day over here. So fair play to him. And yeah, as I said there, it is working well, and hopefully we've one more big game on Saturday, and hopefully he can create history and do it for the first time, bringing a club from League 2 to the Premier League in that short amount of time.
You said there you're back up in Preston. You obviously spent 5.5 good years at Preston. Are you still living in Preston, or?
Yeah, so I come back to Preston like maybe once every couple of weeks. Pretty much on our days off, I just come back up, try to get stuff organised. I just renting a place in Birmingham at the moment. So I still got my house in Preston, so anytime I do get a day off, I come up the road. I just had to get a few things organised, just to get my shoes and stuff for our suits on Saturday, stuff like that. So
can't be wearing trainers and suits, can you?
I was thinking about that. I got into the captain, but obviously it's the captain's calls and he wanted black shoes, so can't disagree on him.
Yeah, famously you wear the wrong stuff at Wembley on a big day and it doesn't end well if the team loses.
You'll be a meme or you'll be some sort of video and that'll be you all over the internet for about a week.
So your contractual situation, are you out at the end of the season with Coventry and a free agent, or what's the story with that?
So I've had a few conversations with the manager, I suppose the last couple of months, and I'm just seeing how things are, see what the scenario is come after Saturday, whether if that's staying in Coventry or going elsewhere. I'll have to just take time to think and see what my options are. Yeah, been my first time being out of contract or free agent for the first time maybe since I left West Ham when I was younger, when I went to Dundalk that time. So I really enjoyed my time at Coventry, so if there's the option there to stay in Coventry, I'll just have to think about it and see where the options are.
are you relaxed about that whole situation, or is it actually a bit of a minor stress, not fully knowing exactly what next season's going to be like, and whether or not you need to buy a gaff down there or rent something long term? Because these are kind of the human decisions that that we as fans frequently forget. Like, actually, you have a lot of logistical bullshit to get through, depending on where you're going to be.
Yeah, that's the worst thing, not knowing where the unknown of, as you said there, like renting a house or bring your stuff from your house where I am in Preston to a different part of the country. I wouldn't say I'm stressed about it. I think I'm pretty relaxed. I know, as I said there, it's probably the first time in my career where I find myself not having like cement contract for the following season, but I'm relaxed about it, and whatever will be, and I'll see what happens in the summer.
It's funny, we had an Irish cricketer on the show yesterday, Seani, and he was talking about that, like getting into his late 20s and being more comfortable with things like that. Funny enough, he was out of contract as a cricketer as well at one point for the first time in his career, and had to deal with it, and I guess used different things, and meditation was one of those. And I remember reading before from yourself that you decided to delete Twitter off your phone a couple of years ago, and social media was obviously one of those things where you could be having a brilliant season, a couple of bad games, and all of a sudden, everyone's saying you're shit or whatever online. So has that been a help to you, kind of relaxing the social media use?
Yeah, definitely mentally. As I said there, I haven't used Twitter maybe over a couple of years. Probably the only social media I probably use is Instagram, and even at that I rarely go on that. But good some things come good from social media, like Twitter and stuff like that, but also there's the bad things. But when I was at Preston, I'd always tell the young lads, that a lot of them would go in on their phone, look up their name and stuff like that, and I was like, try to stay away from that, because for now it might be good when you have a good game, but if you do when you have a bad game, it'll only just get in your head, and it might not affect you the first time or the second time, but maybe later down the line it would, because it definitely did affect me at the time. I had a habit like going onto Twitter, searching my name or whatever, and I said to my wife, was like, I'm just not doing that anymore, and definitely been in a better place since then. It just gives that clear mind, and that stress of like looking on your phone, because if you start reading things over and over again, you'll start to believe it, even if it's not true. For example, like if you hear someone say shit, even if you're confident in yourself, you're not a bad player, you're a good player, but if you read it over and over again, you start to believe it. And at that time it did affect me, but first thing I did was delete the app, and I haven't looked back since.
Did you get advice on that? Like, was somebody able to say there's a relatively straightforward step you can take that's going to massively help you, and that's just deleting it, or did you have to get to that point yourself?
Yeah, I had to take matters on my own hand, to be fair. Like, there wasn't anyone at Preston or whatever that would say, look, you're better off being off social media and stuff like that. I just had to take it into my own hand, and I haven't looked back. To be fair, it probably would have helped me if somebody did come to me closer at the time, because it was going on for about a year and a half. So,
Jeez, I didn't know that. Like, because if you think about it, right, there's always some clown on Twitter who wants to scream abuse at whoever, and if you're searching for that person, it's like if you were in a stadium going over to the people screaming abuse at you on purpose and listening to what they had to say, and like when you put it like that, you'd never do it. But there's just an addiction in the social media apps that we all suffer from, where it's like, I'm going to keep flicking and keep scrolling and keep scrolling. But I guess when they're actually talking about you and your livelihood, it's very hard to train your brain to say, this doesn't matter, this is fine, that's just some clown.
Oh yeah, like I remember some games I played brilliant and I'd score, but I'd always find that one person or one tweet would say something, and I'd be like, fucking hell, it must have been shite then, you know what I mean? But then even in the bad games, I still do it. I don't know why. I just come home on a Saturday and I still do it, but thank God I don't do that anymore. I wish I could go back in time and just tell myself not to do it, but it is what it is, and thank God, like, I don't do it anymore, and the only way is forward.
Yeah, and look, I think it's really interesting, whatever career you have when you finish playing, maybe it is involved in the game, but it's good advice to be able to say, I've been through this with younger players? I don't know, have you, like, obviously you've loads of time left, you know, you could play, nowadays you can play to 38, 39 if you want to, and you always seem like somebody who looks after yourself. So have you thought about what the career is after the playing stops?
Yeah, I'm going to start my coaching badges next summer with a couple of boys. I started doing a course with St Andrew College a couple of months ago in strength and conditioning, so that lasts about 4.5 years. Other than that, no. Obviously you said there, like, some boys play till they're 38, 39. I want to prolong my career as much as I can, because I love doing what I'm doing. Like, you know, it's, you know, sometimes you got to pinch yourself when you were that 4 or 5 year old kids wanted to be a footballer. You know, being involved in a game like the weekend, you know, being involved with a team potentially on the brink of the Premier League. So it is, you know, the stuff of dreams, and as I said, there's hundreds of thousands of kids wanting to be a footballer, and you know, thankfully I was one of those, and I'm, you know, grateful for that. So what I'm going to do when I'm done, I'm not sure about that, but I'll have things in the background where I know I can fall back on when football's done.
The League of Ireland background has given you a solid start in football as well, Seani. Like, you are definitely one of the great success stories of the League of Ireland. I'm sure it's a league you still keep readily in touch with.
Yeah, definitely. Like, every Friday night, for, you know, every second week we're on away days, myself and Luke, we pick a game and we watch it. He usually wants to watch Pats, or you want to watch Cork, so sometimes you have to flip a coin and go with it. But yeah, so it's something that I've been, you know, looking through the last 6 years. It has changed quite a lot since I played in there. You know, the Derry, Shamrock Rovers were up there near the top, whereas, you know, Cork and Dundalk were up there for a couple of years when I left. So it's definitely something that lives long in my heart. Whether I go back there in years to come, or hopefully, you know, when I finish my coaching badges and look to go down that route, I'd love to work back in the League of Ireland in some way or form.
So coming home at some point is on the cards, is it, even just to live?
Yeah. I'll probably move back to Cork, to be fair. I love the town. It's only spent about a year and a half, but my wife's from Cork. Quite close with her family as well, so it's in a few years, yeah, definitely be looking back to go back to Cork some stage. I
was in Cork yesterday, and funny enough, your name came up as like an all-time Cork City legend. They do love you too. You're like John Milan loving his county, even though it's not your county. You do love Cork City.
Born in Kilkenny, bled into Cork, wasn't
it? Your Wikipedia says you're born in Luton. Does that add a bit of intrigue to the weekend as well?
Yeah, so I still have a lot of my aunties and uncles that live in Luton, and my uncle actually is a season ticket holder for Luton. And he texted me there the other day. He's in America for the game. He's absolutely good, but he was like, whatever happens, he'll be happy for me. He's been, you know, following me since my West Ham days, since I've been younger. So it brings a bit more of an added taste to it. You know, I was born in Luton. I moved to Ireland when I was a couple of months old, but I still have a lot of family there, a few friends, so it's a bit of a strange one. I'll have a lot of family in the Luton end, and then obviously I'll have my own family in the Coventry end, so it brings that a little bit of taste to the fixture.
Do you have open lines of communication with Stephen Kenny at all? Seani, is it 11 or 12 caps? Like, do you still harbour ambitions of keeping adding to those caps?
Shut that door, like, you know, I know I haven't been playing as much as last year, but even when I was, you know, playing for Preston, when Stephen took charge and scored goals, it still wasn't getting picked. So it's one of those ones, you know, he's never been in contact with me since the last time I've been called up. So it's, I don't know what happened there or whatever, but watched the game against France there a couple of months ago, and they done really well. So it's only got 2 games now next month, 2 big games. Or is it one friendly and one?
Yes, the Greece game up first, isn't it?
Yeah. it's a big game, you know, to for the boys. So you're hoping to get some points on the board, and then because they did really well against France and very unlucky. They should have at least come away with a point, you know.
It's Greece and Gibraltar.
Sorry, yeah, and the two qualifying games. Is that you would have worked, Sean, I think, with Stephen, wouldn't you, at Dundalk? So is that a surprise that he hasn't been in touch with you, or that there haven't been lines of communication, I guess?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. So I suppose it'd be nice to keep in touch in some shape or form, whether that's a text, whatever. You know, it's probably not my responsibility to get onto him. I suppose he could have sent me a text here or there, but it is what it is. All communications were probably shut the last time I got called up. I think my last game for Hurling was Bulgaria or Belarus at home, I think it was, or Finland away. So yeah, since then we haven't been in contact. I suppose I haven't been playing as much maybe the last year or so I never expected to get called up or whatever. But as I said, when I was playing games and scoring goals at Preston, I was only on standby, and that's, I think, every time he made a squad, I only got called up for someone dropping out. So it is what it is.
One last thing, the period of time when you're out of the team at Preston and then getting to a new manager in Mark Robbins and getting some game involvement, did that give you your taste? Had you fallen a little bit out of love with football at Preston when you weren't getting game time?
Yeah, I suppose I spent a little bit too much time at Preston. I was there for 5.5 years. Maybe I should have left 6 months a year previous, and I felt I needed a fresh start and, you know, a new change room, a new club, a new training ground, and it's gone, you know, really well. Obviously, like us being in the playoffs, you know, I've played 7 games and stuff like that, but I really enjoyed my last 5 months. I've learned a lot from Mark Robbins, and definitely it's because, as we mentioned earlier, he scored that goal, that famous goal, as you said, to keep Sir Alex in his job, and he's been there and done that as a player and as a manager, and to be involved and be part of this team. I'm grateful for the opportunity, and I've been, you know, on the training pitch and in the gaffer's office having many conversations. We're on the same wavelength. So look, football's a mad game. I could end up, you know, coming on Wembley Saturday and scoring a winner, and I keep saying that to myself, you know, manifesting that situation and thinking positive. So anything can happen, and hopefully, whether it comes off somebody's backside and goes in the back of the net, I'm sure the whole Coventry will have take the week off work and be on a party session. But it's one where everyone's looking forward to, and there's some real buzz around the place.
Yeah, or come on and take the winning penalty, Seani. Whatever happens the weekend, however it manifests, best of luck. Thanks a million.
Cheers, pal. Thank you.
It's Seani Maguire giving us some thoughts there ahead of the weekend. Coventry play Luton in the playoff final. OTB AM with Gillette Labs, get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition is available now. We've run way over. On tomorrow's show, Vinnie Perth in studio, Andy Mittens, you had to be there. Jenny Claffey previews Roland Garros, and plenty more besides. Right now, Tony Cascarino on Teddy Sheringham, Jack Charlton and more. Have a wonderful Wednesday.
Now, you're very welcome back. So we are delighted, I have to say, that Tony Cascarino has joined us in studio. He's over in Dublin because he is promoting a new sports documentary. It is called Cascarino Voices, all part of the new Sharp Shorts series on Virgin. So 6 short films commissioned by Virgin Media Television in partnership with Screen Ireland, and it is available to watch now for free on the Virgin Media player. So do go and check it out. Tony Cascarino, warm welcome. Great to have you in our studio. It's lovely to have you.
Thank you for inviting me. Pleasure to be here. I haven't been here in Dublin for about 4 years, so really good.
A lot of us haven't done things we used to do a lot for a couple of years, I suppose. Not that anyone needs reminding. 14-year career with Ireland, 88 caps, Euro 88, Italia 90, USA 94. Over 600 club appearances. Gillingham 81 to 87, Millwall 87 to 90, Villa for a season, Celtic for a season, Chelsea for 2 years, 92 to 94, and then the great Indian summer in France at Marseille and Nancy. Oldest player in League On to score a hat-trick, I saw today. 37, hanging in there. Retired in 2000, and you have forged a brilliantly long career in the media, TalkSport and The Times for 20 plus years. So not bad for the hairdresser from Southeast London, eh? That'll do.
Yeah, when you read them, all that information out there, I sort of scratch my head because I've now been in the media longer than I played football. So that feels quite weird. But I loved it. Look, I loved every minute of it.
Yeah. What's more ruthless, media or football?
I think you could probably put them in the same box. Sport has to be ruthless because you have to get to the very top. There's a lot of tough decisions by a number of people, and I realised that towards the end of my career that if you do. There's standards at certain football clubs. So if you say Man United, Liverpool, all the the big clubs that have achieved a lot, okay is not good enough. And that's when you read out there earlier, you touched on Celtic a year, Aston Villa a year, Chelsea 2, it was nearly 3, but it was 2.5 years. And the reason why I didn't stay at Celtic and obviously Aston Villa was that big clubs didn't play well enough, done okay. Okay is not a standard. And that's when it gets brutal and it gets ruthless. And then you get the media involved who can add more spice to it. And look, I never reacted too much to it because I'd take it on board. I never would get in an argument with a journalist. I would just go, do you know what? I can only prove a point by when I cross the white line, like I have to a manager.
I was reading about your nickname, seeing as you mentioned it at Aston Villa.
Go on.
Ted.
Oh, Ted, yes, I can't know. So, do you want me to tell the story of
Go
Ted?
on then. I thought it sums up the cruelty but also the funniness of a dress.
Yeah, well, I was at Millwall with Teddy Sheringham, and I always was sort of, I played a little bit of a second fiddle role, and he'd always seemed to outdo me. And then for the first time in my career, I get a move to Aston Villa. Before Teddy Sheringham stayed at Millwall, and I went to Villa. Yeah. So I was the first one gone.
It's the big time.
Yeah, the big time. So I go to Villa, and I didn't score for the first 3 or 4 games, and Paul McGrath's there, and I room with Paul at that time, and I can't seem to get a goal. And in training, everyone keeps calling me Ted. So I let it go because you don't react to a nickname. When you get given one, the worst thing you could do is react to, why am I called Ted?
Yeah.
So anyway, it goes on for about 3 or 4 games. Then I get to 6th game and I'm saying to McGrath, Paul, tell me why they keep calling me Ted. And he went, oh, no, I'm not telling you, big man. And Paul is... he doesn't give you big long words out there or big long reasons. He's just, short and sharp, Paul. And anyway, I get to about the 7th game, and the week leading up to the match against Norwich, I've said to Paul, please tell me why they keep calling me Ted. It's driving me great. He went, well, big man, we think we signed the wrong one. We wanted Teddy Sheringham. And I laughed because it was the first time I scored. And of course, after I scored, I went, Ted's arrived.
What was going on in that period? Because at Celtic, you tell the story, and it's in the short feature as well, about Celtic fan abusing you, so it didn't go well there. And then I think on your debut at Chelsea, you were booed as well.
On my debut, yeah.
I mean, that's a hell of a welcome.
I scored as well.
Oh, did you?
I got man of the match in the papers next day for Chelsea. I was booed on my debut.
Right. What was going on in your career at that stage?
I had some personal issues, which weren't particularly good. It was just after sort of the World Cup of '90. I was in a bit of a strange place, and I wasn't fit as I should have been. I joined Celtic, and Liam Brady was one of my heroes, and still is today. He was the manager, and I apologised to Liam when I was there. I said, look, you haven't got the guy and we had a number of meetings, and we chatted a lot, and it just didn't work out. And then, of course, I got that episode of a fan coming up to me in the middle of an high street, giving me stick, and I just literally saying, well, look, Rangers fan, you just, why are you venting at me? And he went, no, I'm not, I'm a Celtic fan. I knew he was. And from that moment, I sort of felt, well, I don't want to be, quitting and thinking he's a loser. And I've said this to many people, I said, look, it's not the big club and he can't play for Celtic because he's not good enough, he can't stand there. I said, I played in front of Millwall fans. Millwall fans are as brutal as they come. I had one of my most successful periods at that time. So it was a difficult thing to take, but with all the things in, and I'm not making excuses because I was not good. I played my worst football by a country mile at Celtic.
Yeah, but look, if your personal life isn't in good shape, I can imagine it's very, very difficult to translate a feel-good energy to your football.
Yeah, I don't know, for whatever reason, it just, the club, Celtic, when I joined, and I think Liam suffered to this for a little bit, it wasn't a particularly good dressing room. There was a lot of divide in there, and I felt it as soon as I got there. And I knew Chrissy Morris and Packy Bonner from playing for Republic of Ireland with them, but it just didn't quite feel the same. And then when you play badly and the divide is shown, you just feel... I just knew I had to go.
Yeah.
I knew I had to go.
Yeah. And France was just this wonderful gift, I suppose. I was struck listening to you talk elsewhere, and you were saying that around the time Marseille played Juventus and you scored a nice goal, and Juventus were like, hang on, who is this guy? And they were checking what age you were with the view maybe to
I scored 2 in that game.
Did you score 2? Okay.
And the guy Kohler, who played for Germany, I think is it Jan Kohler?
Yeah.
He marked me, and I played against him with Republic of Ireland. We won 2-0 in Germany in a friendly just prior to the, what was it? Would have been the 90 World Cup. No, not 90 World Cup. I played against him. It must have been later. But I played against him. He played for Juve as a centre half, and he said, "You're not the same player I played against 6 months ago." You know.
Yeah, because you were fit.
So I tell you what year it was. I joined Marseille in '94. It was '93. It was before the World Cup in America.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were fit, and you were being a professional almost in the truest sense of the word, maybe for the first time in France. That was part of the story.
Yeah. Look, big centre forwards can look cumbersome, awkward, if you're not in your best condition. I played in Marseille. I was 13 stone 6. I never got below 14 stone in England. I was 8 pound lighter. It made a massive difference to me. And I was a bit of a Jack the lad. If the lads were going out, especially at Chelsea at that particular time, if they were going out, I would go with them, and I put on weight quite easily.
Right.
I just did. I remember going on a holiday with Millwall, and I was I roomed with Sheringham, and Sheringham's got not even an ounce of fat on him at any time, wherever he eats.
Still.
And I decided that week in Lanzarote, I'm going to eat and drink exactly the same as Ted, because we were rooming together.
Okay.
I did. He lost 2 pound, I put on 6.
Okay.
That's the truth, honestly. I was like, how does this work? I literally followed him everything he ate, and we went out drinking. We had the same to drink. I said, I'm going to follow you the whole week.
Okay.
And I put on 6 pound.
How did he keep going till his 40s?
42. His dad was exactly the same. His metabolism was, he had an overactive thyroid. Now, if you're underactive, you can put on weight.
Yes, okay.
He had an overactive, which is dangerous in itself, but Ted just burnt calories and did it regularly. And if you look at him now, Ted's 55, something like that, 54, and he hasn't got an ounce of fat on him.
Yeah, I would imagine he is a dream to play with the intelligence and the craft, and
yeah, he was. Yeah,
brilliant.
Yeah.
That partnership was a great one.
Yeah, tremendous. I was lucky. I had some great partners, from Frank Stapleton, John Aldridge, young Robbie Keane, Noel Quinn, and then you go to Clive Allen. Certainly, Kerry Dixon. Kerry was at the end of his career, but some great strikers, and Teddy was up there. I always said, I asked her at a dinner, but what would you compliment Teddy Sheringham for the most? What do you think? You played alongside him. What was his biggest attribute? I said, just look, everywhere he played and who he played with, they all played well. He's the perfect partner, because he could play well with Andy Cole, he could play well with Dwight York, Alan Shearer, Les Ferdinand, Tony Cascarino. He could play well with everybody. That was his biggest asset for me.
Yeah. We're talking, geez, time flies. Jack is dead 3 years in July. I presume you did see the documentary. You're good friends with Andy Townsend.
Yes, yeah. Finding Jack. Yeah.
Yes, okay, yeah. And Gabriel Clarke involved with that. Was that a good... Because we all thought it was great. Looking from afar, that bit more afar than you. Was that a good encapsulation of the man you knew? Did you feel?
Yeah,
caught him?
Yeah. It was Jack, because he could be funny, he could be quiet, he could be ruthless in his ways at times. I thought they depicted Jack brilliantly. I think that was a standout feature, and all the players who played under Jack said the same thing.
Right.
Got Jack. He didn't he didn't particularly like being around players too much. He was quite, well, I don't want to be around you lot this week. You know, so we'd come over to Ireland and we'd train, and Jack would go fishing and then reappear, and on the fishing trip he'd tell John Aldridge the team. So we always knew the team before Jack had told us, because John would tell all the rest of the team. You know, Jack had some really strange ways. I never quite knew if Jack deliberately did it, as to say things to other people that they would feed it to us, so he wouldn't, because he was incredibly sensitive at times, Jack.
Yeah, and well, I thought the moment that has stayed with, I think, people a couple of years on from that documentary now is when he, in his elder years, when his health isn't good, he recognises Paul McGrath on the laptop is just all kinds of beautiful and poignant. But even when Paul is talking and he's going through a difficult time, and Jack, I think, put his arm on him in the bedroom and said, "I'm sorry, son, I didn't know you had it so bad."
He tucked him in.
Yeah, which is, you know, it's at odds with the gruffness, but it was such a real part of who he was. It was lovely.
Yeah, and look, I've said about Jack that Paul could have been chucked out of the Ireland squad numerous times. Jack supported him. The team supported Paul, and Paul knows that. Paul's a very quiet man, and Jack saw the problem guy, young man. He saw it all through Paul, and I think he was incredibly sensitive to anything with Paul, and knew that one thing he couldn't do is discard him, because he felt, if I discard Paul, I'm not sure what Paul would do. And I think that always sat with Jack, that I've got to, whatever he does, if it's as bad, I'll support him until I can't. But he and I thought he depicted Jack in that manner, and I've seen it with Jack over Jack. I've seen Jack over Bobby be like that. You know, I remember us laughing. We were in. There was four of us playing cards in a room, and Jack walks in, and there's a guy with a sweep over on there in the TV, like Bobby had, and we were laughing and saying, "Oh, he's got a wig," and like Joe. Jack went ballistic. Right. He went, "You lot, you make me sick." He said, "How Bobby?" He said, "I had to suffer that for years about having a sweep over, and you're laughing." And we was all like literally silent, because we didn't want to react, because I never thought Jack would be like that. And it was okay. It's one of them things we all do at times, where we mock something that we, you know, and I never saw him like it. And yet he would be sensitive to many scenarios.
That's very interesting. The Liam Brady documentary was out recently. I know you haven't seen it, but I was just going to play you a clip, because it ties into that point on Jack, whereby when it got to the end of Liam's career, you would assume that in this documentary he wouldn't have many nice things to say, I suppose, about the whole situation. And it's the last scene of the documentary. He whips out a letter and says, "Well, actually, Jack did write to me about how it ended." So have a listen. This is Liam reading the letter. And the whole TV audience went, "Oh my God."
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, Liam Brady, he was a god to me, and my best mate was a Arsenal fan, and we watched Liam Brady on the terraces, and then one day on my second game for Ireland, I'm rooming with Liam Brady, and I'm thinking, jeez, we're playing Kaluki, a London card game together, me and Liam. And yeah, I know that sat badly with Jack, and Liam took that, you know, like you would do it. You know, Liam was one of the greatest players of all time to play for Ireland. Tremendous footballer, Liam, and, you know, done something incredible at a very young age, in his early 20s, to go to Italy, play like he did. And to be fair, Liam was, I can remember we played a friendly, and Liam had come over. He was in the Juve team, came over, didn't need to be there at all, came over, didn't want to miss the Ireland game, didn't want to miss it at all. He was there all the time. To him, playing for Ireland was as important playing as Juventus. But it showed the side of Jack as well, that, like I said earlier, he can be incredibly sensitive. I've had it myself with Jack.
You were dropped in Italian 90.
Yeah, he dropped me. He dropped me walking across a foyer in a hotel, and he just said, "You're out!" Shouted it across the foyer, and I went, "Sorry, Jack." He went, "You're out. You were useless against the Egyptians. You're not playing against the Dutch. You're not playing," and that was it. But in the years afterwards, I sort of got it, because Jack, because he has to make really ruthless decisions, he doesn't like it, and his only way of dealing with it is to be straight up front and get away from it, and it's done. He doesn't go into some, fake dialogue of, well, you didn't do this in this game and this didn't go well, so I'm going to... He doesn't do any of that. He doesn't like doing that. He's uncomfortable. And what he went straight for the jugular. I didn't like it. I was like Liam. I was devastated that day. I've just lost my place in the group stages of the World Cup 90, and... but it's his way, and I learned that over years. And
so you didn't hold a grudge over that?
No, I didn't, because I always felt I'm going to prove Jack wrong. And look, Noel Quinn came in, played the game, scored the goal. What can I do and say that is a wrong decision? It's not. It was a decision that he had to make. He felt he had to do it. And if you think you have to do something in life, you have to go with it, whether you prove wrong or right afterwards. So I get it with Jack, and I enjoy. It's part of the reason why I'm here really now today, we'll put in process, which obviously Trimoon Productions is to do something way more bigger and get a lot of the stuff I've seen, witnessed, played. I've been in punditry 23 years and I've played nearly 20. So I've had a long time, 4 decades in the game, and I've met some incredible people. I've been very, very fortunate. And if someone said to me, I'm going again, I'd say, give me just the life I've had. Yeah. That's all I want. What I've done with the downs and the ups, all I want is that again. So it's been special.
What was the best time of your career, the best time of your life?
Well, I would say it's really weird you asked me that question, because if you said to me career as in football, I would have said then Ireland being a great side to play for, and just that experience. And I come through Dublin Airport today, and I've got one guy meeting me with a cab driver to meet me. In 1990, it was 500,000 people meeting me and the rest of the team, and that was just extraordinary. But I would say definitely professionally, then I would say I'm the happiest I've been personally, because I've gone through some very difficult personal situations, but I'm as happy as I've been for a long time.
Are you? Because, I'm amazed at how open you are about your life, actually, as someone who would lean towards privacy, even amongst friends half the time. You're like this open book, reading various...
I know, I do get told I say too much
interviews
sometimes.
And podcasts, and obviously the book with Paul Kimmage all those years ago. Because in 2014 he interviewed you, and you were still, I suppose, overcoming divorced...
Yeah. French woman called Virginia.
Yeah. Well, I think, did you say she passed away during...
Yeah, she passed away last January, not 2022 in January. Okay. And I had 3 children with her, and they lived in Tahiti.
Yes.
And it come with enormous consequences that is being resolved literally in the last few months. And I'm seeing my son Josh, who I last saw at 6, who's now 16. It was a very turbulent finish to our relationship, and I took that really badly, because it's like if you've got children and you've got, say, a 6-year-old, and you say, well, you're not going to see that 6-year-old for 10 years.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.